Chapter 181 A Close Call. The recoil from his jutsu helped the priest move away from the line of Fujin's attack. However, it wasn't enough. The vacuum cannon grazed the right side of the priest's abdomen and tore a huge chunk of it. His wound began bleeding immediately. His liver and intestines were damaged. At the same time, whatever remained of the lightning beam rained down on Fujin. Fujin extended his left arm forward to block it. All the lightning charges hit his left arm, and lightning flowed through his body. Fujin endured while thinking. Not bad. Due to my training in the lightning element, this attack doesn't feel much. Though if I took the entire beam head-on, it would have hurt. Anyways, I now see why Renjuro emphasized the importance of undertaking missions, though deciding to counterattack was risky. The danger allowed me to perform my jutsu even faster. I wanted to create a wind vacuum beam. The center of the beam would be made of vacuum. It would be only a few micrometers wide but would be very long as it would have to extend across the entire length of the beam. Instead, I managed to create a much stronger vacuum bullet. I will call it vacuum cannon after I train it properly. Though the result wasn't what I envisioned, it is still a very good improvement. While Fujin was enduring the electric shocks, Miko flickered next to the priest while weaving hand signs. Fire release Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. She fired 6 small fireballs at the priest. 2 of these were headed at him while the other 4 cut off his escape routes. The priest, who had just suffered a huge injury, now had to face another attack. She smirked. It's over. Unfortunately for Miko, her calculations were horribly wrong. Humiliated at being injured to this extent, the priest entered into a frenzy. His eyes turned reddish as he exerted all his chakra. A high amount of lightning gathered on his palms. He screamed in rage as he attacked his surroundings indiscriminately. The lightning hit the fireballs and deflected or dispersed them. The grass around him was hit, and it caught fire. Miko was very close to him and was in range as well. She tried to flicker but wasn't fast enough. Lightning bolts hit her and made her scream in pain. The lightning electrocuted her and left multiple burns on her body. She fell to the ground in pain and was unable to control her body properly. Seeing that his opponent was vulnerable, the priest grinned. He immediately moved towards Miko while pulling out another retractable spear and making lightning flow through it. Fujin's expression grew grim. He had just finished enduring the previous attack. He flickered instantly. While Fujin, Miko and Okihiko were engaged in intense battles, Masaru was under no threat. His opponent acted like a turtle and defended everything Masaru threw at him without counterattacking. A water wall was erected in front of the priest. On the opposite side, a dozen explosive tags exploded. The wall collapsed but the priest was unharmed. Masaru had a frown on his face. He cursed in his mind. Not only does this bastard defend well, but he also does so without even looking at me. The priest was relaxed when he suddenly sensed danger. He immediately jumped up while weaving hand signs. Half a second after he jumped, a fire dragon erupted from the ground and moved straight at him. The priest completed his hand signs. Water release water prison jutsu. A water prison formed around him. The fire dragon hit the prison and exploded, but the priest was safe. However, his expression wasn't good. He analyzed. Who attacked me from there? Did he create a clone sneakily or is it someone else? He prayed that it wasn't the second scenario, if Sankoku or the other priest was defeated. Then his death would be only a matter of time. Right after the fire dragon exploded, a dozen kunai with explosive tags were launched from the ground at the water prison. At the same time, Masaru flickered and tossed more explosive tags at the water prison. Under the intense attack, the water prison crumbled. However, the priest jumped out of harm's way. Masaru followed him and attacked him with kunai. Not wanting to risk looking into his eyes, the priest moved away from him while looking at his feet. Surprisingly, he saw the Sharingan eyes on the ground in front of his feet. In an instant, he fell into a Genjutsu. At the very next moment, a kunai stabbed into his skull through his eye. Masaru smirked as a figure appeared from the ground. He said, if he avoids looking into 2 Sharingans, we can just use 4. The enemy will succumb eventually. Great job, Genji. Is Shunko safe? The person who had just interfered in the fight was Genji, who had earlier taken Shunko away. Genji nodded and said, I healed his wounds as best as I could and left a shadow clone with him. He isn't in any mortal danger, though we can't expect him to join the fight and might have to carry him on the way back, Masaru replied. Great work. I will go and aid Akihiko. You aid the 2 kids. They are fighting above their weight class. Genji was surprised to hear that Miko and Fujin were fighting against a priest by themselves. He had observed Masaru's fight and had realized that the priest he was facing was stronger than him. He nodded and quickly moved towards them. Miko was in a state of shock. She had seen Fujin's attack wound their enemy critically. She pressed on with the intention to finish the fight. But the tables were turned in the blink of an eye. A lot of her skin was burnt due to the lightning shocks. Her body couldn't move properly, and her Sharingan saw the priest running towards her like a savage. She desperately tried to get her body to move, but to no avail. The priest reached her and raised his spear up and slashed it down at full power. Terror spread through her mind as she realized that her life could end. Memories flashed through her mind. She thought about her mother, her father, her childhood friends, her relatives, her sensei Hoka and Fujin. At that very instant, Fujin appeared in front of her and slashed his sword at the spear. Miko's eyes shined as she watched Fujin. The priest also noticed him, and the grin on his face grew wider. The two weapons clashed. Fujin expected his sword to cut through the spear once again. But unexpectedly, it didn't. The priest yelled loudly and exerted all the force he could on the spear as he thought, "I knew this kid would jump in front of her, even though these kids are ruthless. The Konoha ninjas are all softies. If they were from Kumo or Kiri, I would have worried about the other cutting my head while I cut their teammate's head. But with Konoha, the possibility of such an action is minuscule. So I have poured all my remaining chakra into this spear. The victory or defeat would be decided with this one attack. With one swing, I'll kill them both." Fujin realized that his opponent had focused all his chakra on the spear. The force that the priest exerted began to push Fujin's feet backwards. But suddenly, Fujin controlled and focused his chakra. Some chakra gathered on his soles to stabilize his position. He was no longer being pushed behind. However, compared to his feet, a lot more chakra flowed through his sword. He pushed back with his full power. A crack appeared on the spear. The priest's eyes widened as he saw his spear being cut into two once again. He watched as the sword continued ahead. He tried to move, but his body was too exhausted to respond in time. The sword reached him and severed his neck. His severed head had a look of disbelief as he watched Fujin. His last thoughts were, to think that I would die at the hands of Unke, the last priest under Zenkoku, was killed. Chapter 182 Evolution. Miko watched the priest's head fly in the sky. Her body and mind finally relaxed. For the first time in her life, she was genuinely grateful to someone. Genji reached this battlefield to see Fujin cut his opponent's head off. His eyes noticed Fujin's chakra flare at the last moment and left him astounded. Fujin sensed someone rushing towards him and immediately looked at Genji. Seeing that it was an ally, Fujin relaxed. He turned his attention to Miko in order to check her injuries. However, he suddenly stopped. A surprise could be seen on his face. Genji flickered next to him and looked at Miko. His expression grew grim on seeing her injuries, but suddenly shock could be seen on his face. Miko didn't understand why Fujin and Genji were looking at her like this. Soon, a huge smile broke on Genji's face. He exclaimed in excitement, "Miko, your Sharingans have evolved into two Tomo Sharingans." Miko was shocked to hear that. After a moment, the shock passed and excitement rushed in. She tried moving, but the pain brought her back to earth. Seeing her grimacing in pain, Genji said, "Don't move, I will heal you as much as I can first." He began using mystical palm jutsu to treat the burns on her body. Fujin observed them as he thought, "I thought I had huge gains from the fight, but mine don't even compare to hers. That Sharingan is a huge cheat. Though to be fair, my life wasn't at risk. Even if my jutsu had failed, I was confident about surviving that attack without affecting my ability to fight." On the other hand, her life probably flashed in front of her eyes. Fujin turned his attention to his dead opponent as he analyzed. This guy was very good. His every move was a scheme, and he managed to reset initiative and flip the table multiple times. My attack should have finished him off, and yet he managed to reverse the situation. If I didn't know chakra flow or if my chakra reserves were close to empty, he would have managed to kill us both. Even assuming that I didn't make a move or was slow, Miko would have died. Perhaps in that case he wouldn't have exerted all his chakra in that attack. Either way, he perfectly calculated or guessed our moves and made the right plan. More importantly, I shouldn't underestimate someone just because they are critically injured, even though no one will go off like Daidara. The final struggle can be very tricky, especially when dealing with veteran Junins. He focused back on Miko and observed Genji's jutsu without disturbing him. Genji was slowly healing the burn marks on her body. Fujin realized, he doesn't seem to be very good with medical ninjutsu. Genji noticed that Fujin was observing him. Without taking his eyes off Miko, he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of her. If you can still fight, you can go help out Akihiko and Masaru. They are fighting against the Grand Priest." Fujin asked, "So Masaru won his fight?" Genji nodded. Fujin looked in the direction that Akihiko, Masaru and Zankoku were fighting. He could feel that an intense battle was happening there. He said, I am very low on chakra. I won't be able to help much in the fight. And seeing the way he controls blood, I could be a burden instead. Genji was disappointed with that answer. However, he said, all right, look after Miko after I am done healing her. Fujin replied, I will. Genji stopped talking. After a minute, Fujin asked, are you a medical ninja, Genji-san? Genji answered, no, I just copied the mystical pomjutsu and practiced it for a bit. Fujin replied, I see, he thought. As I thought, I guess most of the Uchihas have copied this jutsu. After all, it should be very convenient to heal yourself and your teammates without having to depend on a medical ninja that can't fight or defend well. Just like Genji, Masaru rushed towards Akihiko's battlefield. He went sneakily and hid in the tall grass as he observed the fight. His eyes widened as he saw Akihiko's condition. A huge scar was visible on his right chest. His jacket was dyed red by blood. A frown formed on his face. How is Akihiko struggling so much? Is the opponent so skilled that he can dominate him while needing to avoid looking into his eyes? As he was analyzing, he suddenly realized something. Wait a minute. He is directly looking at Akihiko. He isn't avoiding the Sharingan at all. But why isn't Akihiko casting Genjutsu? He thought hard and concluded, the only possibility I can think of is that Genjutsu doesn't work on him for some reason. Whatever, I'll know when I join the battle. He stayed put in his spot waiting for an opportunity to sneak attack. Akihiko and Zankoku kept fighting, unaware of Masaru's presence. Tanto and spear clashed multiple times, without anyone landing hits. In one such clash, Zankoku exerted a lot of force and pushed Akihiko backwards. However, Akihiko just used Zankoku's force to move away from him. Tired of being stalled, Zankoku chased with full speed. Unfortunately, he moved very close to where Masaru was. As he was chasing, he felt heat on his right. He turned his head to see a long fire dragon heading straight at him. Due to how close they were, he couldn't dodge or defend. The fire dragon opened its huge mouth and chomped down on him. Inside the fire dragon, Zankoku screamed loudly as his flesh burned. In a few seconds, the fire dragon exploded. Akihiko moved away from the explosion, and Masaru appeared next to him. He smirked and said, bullseye. However, Akihiko's expression didn't change. He said, it isn't over, he can heal from all wounds, and Genjutsu doesn't work on him. So don't put your hopes on it. Masaru frowned. He pulled out a scroll and said, no wonder you have been struggling so much. He made the confrontation hand seal. The scroll transformed into hundreds of explosive tags and rushed into the place where the explosion had happened. All of Zankoku's skin was burnt. He was covered in blood. However, he still stood straight. The blood on his body rapidly healed him. New skin was forming, but it was horrible to look at. At that moment, he saw hundreds of explosive tags heading at him. He immediately formed a cocoon of blood around him. The explosive tag stuck on the cocoon and began exploding. The cocoon was destroyed. Zankoku tried running away, but most of the explosive tags exploded right next to him. Akihiko and Masaru observed him with their Sharingan. They saw as his flesh was blasted, but the blood that poured out of his body kept protecting and healing him. Masaru asked in an annoyed tone, does his body have an infinite amount of blood? Akihiko answered, my guess is that he produces it with his chakra. We may have to exhaust his chakra to truly win, or we will need Sora's Fuin Jutsu. Masaru asked, have you tried cutting him into pieces? Akihiko answered, haven't been successful so far. As they were speaking, they heard Zankoku yelling in anger. A few dozen blood drops formed around him, and he fired them in all directions. Akihiko and Masaru dodged quickly. Akihiko said, that's why, every time I manage to get an upper hand, he resets my advantage with a wide-range jutsu forcing me to evade. They saw an intact Zankoku walk out of the smoke. However, his body was horrible to see. He had no clothes on his body, and his entire body was covered in horrible scars. Masaru said, he looks disgusting. But this is indeed annoying. Our chakra is already about to run out. As they were about to engage in another round of battle, Genji was done healing Miko. He said, I have healed your burns. They won't be harmful to you. But don't move around a lot. I can't deal with the damage the lightning might have inflicted on your inner organs. Fujin, look after her. I'll go help out Akihiko. Fujin nodded. He saw Genji leaving. He made a hand sign and a shadow clone appeared next to him. Without speaking, the shadow clone followed Genji's path. Miko asked, why did you make a shadow clone with so little chakra? Fujin shrugged and said, I'm interested in seeing how that battle ends. This guy is probably the strongest opponent we have ever faced. Other than that incident when we were returning from hot water, of course. Miko said, that's true. I wish I could see it too. They didn't say anything for a few seconds. Suddenly, Miko said, Fujin, thank you. I was very scared after I got hit. Fujin looked at her. He could feel that she was very grateful to him. He said, our team might have been disbanded, but we are still teammates. No need to be thankful for such stuff. Miko didn't reply and just smiled. Fujin asked, how are your injuries? Miko sighed and said, my whole body is aching. That bastard fried my body inside out. Fujin replied, yeah, he was fierce. Veteran Junins are still too strong for us. Chapter 183. How the fuck did Itachi kill them all? While Fujin and Miko talked, Genji and Fujin's shadow clone reached the battlefield. Genji hid the same way as Masaru had, while Fujin's clone stayed away and observed from a long distance. He had no intention of interfering in the fight. With Masaru's help, Okihiko finally had the upper hand. They inflicted injuries on Zankoku frequently, but all of his injuries healed automatically. Genji was stunned. He thought, how do I sneak attack someone who heals without any jutsu? Fujin's clone too was shocked. He watched the fight as he analyzed. This guy is strong, ridiculously so. While Haiden couldn't be killed, I don't recall him having such a healing ability. Sick. Now I'm even more interested in his blood jutsus. I hope Hiruzen orders the Yamanakas to dig out all the information from his brain. Though asking it from Hiruzen would require some effort, he no longer rewards me sadly. After observing for a while, Genji decided, my sneak attacks work on the basis that I would injure my prey critically, or trap him in a genjutsu. It's pointless to hide against an opponent like him. The kid made a good decision to not show up here. Genji revealed himself by throwing some shurikens at Zankoku. Zankoku barely dodged them. His expression grew grim as he saw another opponent. He asked, you killed all my priests. Disbelief could be felt in his voice. Masaru replied, that is the case. You are all by yourself. Stop your misery and surrender. Only then you would live. Hearing those words, Zankoku began to laugh loudly like a lunatic. He said loudly, do you think that killing those weaklings will make me surrender? I will sacrifice all of you to Lord Jashin and get even more blessings from him. As he was speaking, he began bleeding. Soon his entire body was covered in blood. His chakra, which was getting exhausted, spiked once again. Without paying any attention to his defense, he moved towards the Uchihas. Okihiko and Masaru's expressions grew grim. Zankoku closed the distance and swung his arm at them. Multiple drops of blood were released from his arm at the Uchihas. They immediately flickered away. Zankoku chased them, not wanting to waste chakra unnecessarily. The Uchihas tossed explosive tags at him to hinder his path, but Zankoku ignored it all and continued the chase. Fortunately, he wasn't as fast as the Uchihas. While engaging in combat, Okihiko said, Genji, what's the status of others? Genji threw a kunai at Zankoku and said, Miko and Shunko are injured. Fujin is fine, but his chakra is very low. Okihiko instructed, okay, leave this battlefield, team up with Fujin and get Sora out. Leave a clone to watch over Shunko and Miko. Genji replied, all right. He flickered away from the battlefield. Okihiko looked at Masaru and shouted, Masaru, let's go all out. We will keep him tied down here. Masaru nodded and launched a fire dragon at Zankoku. A blood armor formed on Zankoku as he rushed into the fire dragon. However, unlike a normal fire dragon jutsu, this one had dozens of explosive tags in it. The fire dragon caused a massive explosion while Zankoku was in it. His momentum was finally stopped. Without waiting for the dust to clear up, Okihiko flickered into the spot of the explosion. Zankoku's body was being healed when Okihiko attacked him once again. He was blasted back as he cursed in his mind. How many fucking explosive tags do these Uchihas have? Bastards have used more than 1,000 so far. Despite the damage, Zankoku counterattacked immediately. Okihiko and Masaru engaged in an intense fight. Fujin's clone watched as the battle went on. After a few minutes, Fujin was awed. He thought, holy fuck, these two are very good. I didn't expect Masaru to be this good as well, and Okihiko is a beast as well. However, he suddenly had a thought that troubled him a lot. He thought, if these guys are so strong, how the fuck did a 13-year-old Itachi kill them all by himself? Even with Obito's help, killing all of them in a single night would have to be a Herculean task. After all, Okihiko isn't the only elite Junin in the Uchiha clan. From what I remember, there are 4 more elite Junins other than him and Fugaku in the Uchiha clan. And they also have far more Junins than any other clan in Konoha. Not to mention, not everyone would give up and offer their lives like Fugaku and Mikoto. In fact, I doubt anyone did so. So is Itachi so ridiculously overpowered, or will there be some other factors involved as well? Fujin's clone tried thinking, but he couldn't figure it out. Even with 2 S-rank ninjas, killing so many strong ninjas in a few hours didn't seem to make any sense. Especially after he had just witnessed the abilities of some of the Uchihas. In the end, he concluded, either there were more factors involved in the massacre, or the gap between a rank A and rank S ninja is way bigger than what I remember. He sighed. If it is the second case, then reaching that level will be a lot tougher. While the fight was going on, Genji moved towards Fujin. He created a shadow clone and dispersed it to send a message to his clone which was looking after Shunko. The clone carried Shunko and moved towards Fujin's location. Fujin and Miko were chatting casually. Miko finally managed to get up and sit. Suddenly, Fujin looked away in a direction. Miko asked, "What happened?" Fujin replied, "Genji is back for some reason." Did they already win? At the next moment, Genji appeared in front of them. He said, "Fujin, you'll be helping me get Sora out." Fujin raised an eyebrow. He asked, "What's the situation?" Normally Genji wouldn't have wasted time, but since he was waiting for his clone, he said, "The opponent has a very high regenerative ability and is immune to Genjutsu. We need Sora's Fuinjutsu to trap him." Fujin and Miko were surprised. Miko said, "I didn't think the opponent would be so strong." Genji's clone finally arrived. He was carrying Shunko on his back. Genji said, "Fujin, follow me." Miko quickly said, "I want to come too." Genji looked at her and shook his head. He said, "No, you are too weak right now. If he assaults us when we are getting Sora out, you will be a burden." Without waiting for her reply, he left. Fujin followed him. They arrived at the place where the cave had collapsed. Fujin said, "Uncle Sora should be all right. I guess he didn't come out as he needs to stay there to ensure the kids are safe." Genji nodded and said, "Yeah, I guess that he created some barriers to keep them safe, so getting the kids out will put them at risk. Let's just go down and see what the situation is." He made hand signs and disappeared into the ground. Fujin followed him. After reaching down, they both noticed 5 pairs of chakra signatures. Fujin said, "The one in the north has the highest chakra level. The rest should be clones." Genji and Fujin went towards them. They moved until they reached the barrier. Genji knocked on the barrier. Sora and Haru were meditating to regain their chakra quickly. As soon as they heard the knock, both opened their eyes and looked at the spot Genji tapped. Seeing that it was allies, they relaxed. Sora made a hand sign and created an opening in the barrier. Fujin and Genji got in. Without wasting any time, Genji briefed Sora about the situation. Sora and Haru frowned after hearing about Zankoku's abilities. Sora made a shadow clone and said, "The barrier needs me to monitor, so I'll leave a shadow clone here. Haru and Fujin stay here and ensure that the kids remain safe. Genji, come with me." Everyone nodded and followed Sora's instructions. Fujin and Haru were low on chakra, so Sora didn't involve them in the fight. Sora and Genji left, leaving Haru, Fujin and Sora's clones to look after the kids. Sora's clone said to Fujin, "We shouldn't be in any danger here. The barrier can withstand all the weight above it and can withstand some attacks too. The only danger is if that Grand Priest decides to launch an all-out assault on the barrier. But that isn't likely to happen. So just relax and focus on recovering your chakra." Fujin nodded and sat in a meditative posture. Sora and Genji reached the battlefield and observed from a distance. Okihiko and Masaru were engaged in an intense battle. Both were breathing heavily. But so was Zankoku. His inability to land a hit on the 2 Uchihas in front of him annoyed him. Sora observed Zankoku's fighting style and jutsus carefully and began analyzing and calculating how he should trap Zankoku. Chapter 184. The result, after observing for a minute. Sora said, "He is very strong. I'm surprised that someone so strong has managed to keep his identity and ability hidden for so long." Genji asked, "Can you trap him with Fuinjutsu?" Sora replied, "It'll be tough. Hopefully, Okihiko and Masaru will keep him occupied. Keep an eye on the battle. If he suspects something and tries looking for me, you'll expose yourself and attack him." Genji nodded. Inscribing seals around the battlefield would need time, and anything could happen in battle. His job would be to ensure that Sora's presence stays hidden. Sora began inscribing seals around the place where the fighting was happening. Genji followed him closely. Luckily, Sankoku's entire attention was on Okihiko and Masaru, since Sora didn't leak any killing intent or take any actions that would directly threaten him. Sankoku stayed oblivious to his actions. Akihiko and Masaru were oblivious to Sora's actions too and fought intensely. Multiple fires were burning in the area. Due to their fire jutsus, a lot of the ground was dyed in blood. Akihiko and Masaru stayed away from such areas. Sankoku's blood manipulation had raised their alertness to the maximum. Fujin's clone, who was secretly observing, had to change his locations a few times due to Sankoku's wide area attacks accidentally targeting his locations. After a few minutes, Sankoku stopped attacking. He looked at Akihiko and Masaru. They were breathing heavily, though there weren't any critical injuries on them. Sankoku knew that they wouldn't last for much longer. He said, "You won't last much longer." Masaru was looking for opportunities to waste time. He said while breathing heavily, "We can still go on for hours. You haven't seen anything yet." Sankoku laughed and replied, "And how would you do that without any chakra? It's only a matter of time before you drop dead. But I have an offer for you two." Akihiko squinted his eyes and asked, "What offer?" Sankoku answered, "Serve Lord Jashin. I'll accept you as my priests and teach you the ways of Lord Jashin. When I complete the ritual, I will become the strongest person in the world. Then you can rule the world alongside me." Both Akihiko and Masaru were speechless by his confidence. However, neither showed it on their face. Akihiko stayed quiet for some time before saying, "I need a few minutes to think." However, Sankoku said, "No, tell me your answer right now. Either you agree or you die." Akihiko put on a thoughtful face. He looked at Masaru and asked, "What are your thoughts?" Masaru thought and answered after a few seconds, "His proposal is tempting, but what about our families? We can't abandon them." Sankoku heard his answer and said, "When you serve Lord Jashin, all your fellow believers are your family. If you want to, you can convert your current family too." Masaru replied, "That sounds good. But what if my wife or son doesn't want to follow Lord Jashin? You know the new generation doesn't believe in God." His question stumped Sankoku. However, Sankoku soon realized that something was amiss. He looked at them. 2 spears made of blood appeared in his arms as he threatened, "Enough wasting time. Give me your answer now." Masaru said, "Akihiko, I will trust your decision." Anger formed on Akihiko's face. He looked at Masaru and shouted, "Why the fuck do you always leave tough decisions to me? For one fucking time, think with your own brain." Masaru barked back, "What the fuck do you mean? Didn't you go around saying that you are the leader since you were a kid, so make a fucking decision?" Akihiko shouted back. Why you ink, however, his shout was interrupted by Sankoku throwing the spears at them. Both immediately dodged. Sankoku's face, which already was full of horrifying scars, was dark. He said, "Do you two think that I am a fool?" A smirk formed on Akihiko and Masaru's lips. Though they didn't say anything, anyone could see their answer. Sankoku was about to attack again when he felt a chakra behind him. He quickly turned around to see Sora some distance from him. A smile could be seen on his face as he made the confrontation hand seal. In the next second, a barrier appeared around Sankoku. Sankoku quickly moved and punched the barrier with full force, but there was no dent on the barrier. He quickly tried escaping underground, but there was a barrier on the ground as well. Soon more barriers began forming. Sankoku was trapped in a 3-layer barrier formation. He was inside the first layer. Akihiko and Masaru stood in the second layer. Sora and Genji joined them. They stood outside the barrier under which Sankoku was trapped. Realizing the danger, Sankoku attacked the barrier with full power in order to break free. His attacks made the barrier shake, but it didn't break. Masaru smirked and taunted him. "You should have surrendered when you had the chance." Sankoku stopped struggling and sat down. He replied, "The barrier is strong but not strong enough. Once my chakra recovers, I can break through it. And though I am trapped, you can't attack me either." However, Sora smirked and replied, "I am not a half-assed seal master like your priest." He grabbed a kunai with an explosive tag attached and threw it at Sankoku. The kunai traveled through the barrier like it was air. Sankoku's eyes widened. A blood barrier appeared in front of him. The explosive tag exploded, but he was safe. Sora said, "This barrier allows one-way travel. Meaning, we can attack you however much we want to, and you can only endure our attacks without being able to counterattack. How long do you think you will last?" Sankoku's expression became grim. Immediately, layers of blood surrounded him. A multi-layered cocoon formation of blood protected him. Masaru taunted, "Our chakra might have hit rock bottom, but we still have thousands of explosive tags. How long do you think you will last?" Without another word, the Uchihas encircled the barrier. Everyone began throwing explosive tags into the barrier. Huge explosions took place in the barrier. The Uchihas, who were standing outside it, didn't feel anything at all. Slowly, the layers of cocoons began breaking apart. Fujin's clone couldn't hear their words but sweat erupted as he saw that scene. He thought, how shameless, this is just bullying. They used so many explosive tags during the fighting. And now they have used at least 100 more. Do Uchihas don't know the difference between a normal paper and an explosive paper tag? No wonder Miko was spamming explosive tags in the tune-in exams. It's as if they have a printing factory to make them. After enduring a few hundred explosive tags, all of Zankoku's defenses crumbled. His body began taking the explosions head-on. His body tried to heal itself, but the amount of damage he was taking was too high. Okihiko was observing him carefully with his Sharingan. He kept observing until his chakra reserves ran out. He instructed, stop. Immediately all Uchiha stopped. Okihiko grabbed his Tanto. Chakra flowed through it. He threw it inside the barrier. Sankoku had no energy to move. The Tanto sliced through his neck and beheaded him. The four Uchihas observed him to see if he could still heal up. So did Fujin's shadow clone. He wondered, will he be alive like Haidun? Or does he not have the same sort of immortality that Haidun will have in the future? As Zenkoku's body didn't move, he was dead. Okihiko looked at Genji and said, make a shadow clone and check him. Genji nodded and made a shadow clone. The clone entered the barrier and checked. Sankoku's body was in terrible shape. The explosions had destroyed a lot of his flesh. Whatever flesh he had was completely burnt. Both his eyes were destroyed, his nose, ears and lips were destroyed too. Even his bones were cracked in many places. After inspecting, Genji's clone said, he is completely dead. Akihiko and Masaru sighed in relief. They had fought him the most and knew what frightening vitality he had. Okihiko said, Sora, seal his body properly. We will study him thoroughly. Sora nodded and began sealing Zenkoku's body. Okihiko said, in the mission report, we will mention his abilities and say that his body was thoroughly destroyed by our explosive tags. Nothing was left behind. Don't tell Haru or the kids about this either. You can tell Haru later, but no word to the kids. On hearing that, the three Uchihas became serious and nodded. Sora asked, is it Duunk? Okihiko interrupted, yes, the relationship between the village and the clan is deteriorating. So Fugaku-sama is against the coup right now. It is probably unavoidable, unless the village elders stop mistreating us. If the coup does happen, then the abilities of this guy would help us immensely if we can learn them. Everyone nodded. They had seen what fearsome abilities Zenkoku had. If multiple Junin-level Uchihas could control their blood in a similar manner, or even get just the self-healing ability, then defeating them would become very difficult. Only an S-rank ninja could defeat them quickly. Fujin's clone didn't hear their words. After seeing Sora seal Zenkoku's body, he dispersed himself. The Uchihas were unaware that the fight and the result had been witnessed by him. Chapter 185 The Dangerous Uchiha Clan. Fujin received the memories of his clone. He opened his eyes but closed them again. He thought, damn, I never thought they'd be so strong. That said, that Grand Priest turned out to be the real surprise. I never imagined he'd be able to face off against an elite Junin and two Junins at the same time, and still have an upper hand. I can understand the healing ability. But why was he immune to Genjutsu? Fujin tried analyzing but didn't reach any conclusion. He sighed. I hope Hiruzen is able to get the Yamanaka clan to read all his memories. Autonomous healing and Genjutsu immunity are skills that would be immensely helpful. Though considering that I never saw anyone use this in Naruto, it's likely that these abilities can't be gained without worshipping Jashin. I hope that isn't the case. Sora sealed Zankoku's body parts. He also collected as much blood as he could that was scattered on the ground. After he was done, Masaru asked, what next? Okihiko looked at Sora and asked, are the kids safe? Sora nodded. Haru delayed the collapse of the cave until I could raise the barriers. He also put them to sleep. With all enemies dead, they will stay safe, Okihiko said. Great, we will pick up Miko and Shunko and rest in the barrier. In a few hours, the pills should bring our chakra back to full. We will return the kids and head back to Konoha before the effects of the soldier pill ends and exhaustion hits us. Everyone nodded. The group moved towards Miko and Shunko. Both were resting. Genji's clone noticed them coming. After confirming that they weren't enemies in disguise, he dispersed himself. Miko saw Okihiko and asked, did we win, Uncle? Okihiko nodded. Yes, all enemies are dead. Miko asked, where is Fujin? A worry could be seen on her face. Masaru chuckled and said, don't worry, he is with the kids along with Haru. We will be heading there as well and will take a break for 6 hours. Miko blushed on hearing the chuckle. She said, all right, let's go. She walked ahead of the group. Shunko still couldn't move properly, so Genji picked him up and carried him. They arrived in front of the collapsed mountain. Akihiko looked around to see a bunch of dead bodies. He said, "Collect and store all the dead bodies. We will hand them to the authorities of this country." Everyone nodded and began sealing the dead bodies, except for the bodies that were buried under the mountain. The remaining bodies were stored in storage seals. They entered the place where Fujin and Haru were resting. Fujin and Haru got up on seeing others arrive. Haru asked with a smile on his face, "Is it over?" Akihiko nodded. He looked at everyone and said, "We have killed all the Jashinists that we had investigated. All the priests, devotees and servants are dead. We collected most of their bodies. Their leader, the Grand Priest, had a terrifying healing ability, so he had to blow him to smithereens to defeat him. His body has been completely destroyed." Fujin was surprised. His thoughts ran at lightning speed. "What the hell? Shit, these guys have the same idea as me. But they want to keep it with their clan, instead of passing it to the village. Fucking hell, their coup should be very close, so it's understandable that they want to build up some trump cards. But, should I let this opportunity slip?" Though Fujin tried his best to not show any emotions on his face. Akihiko noticed that something was off. He asked, "Is there any issue, Fujin?" Fujin looked back while thinking. Shit, he sensed that something was off. He quickly said, "No, I just have one doubt, but I wasn't sure if it would be appropriate to ask." Akihiko said, "Don't worry, just ask. If it is inappropriate, I won't answer." Fujin nodded and said, "I was wondering how you could place so many ninjas under genjutsu and control their actions. After all, I heard that it is difficult to control more than one at a time." Masari smirked and commented, "That would have been inappropriate if it wasn't already known to every veteran ninja in Konoha." Sora explained, "The genjutsu that we cast on them jumbles up their memories. We implant some false memories in their mind and make them surface at the right moment. So we don't control them, rather they just make a move due to their false memories. For instance, the ones who killed the Seal Master all thought that he killed one of their loved ones." Fujin's face became serious. He said, "Wow, that is a very strong method. No wonder we won so easily." However, Sora shook his head and said, "Though this technique might seem very strong, it isn't that effective. In war, most enemy ninjas will frequently disrupt their chakra to ensure that they aren't placed under a genjutsu by us. So unfortunately, it isn't that effective anymore." Fujin instinctively wanted to disrupt his chakra but controlled himself. He thought for a bit and nodded. "That makes sense. Though if it did work as well as this time, Konoha might win all the wars without any problem." Akihiko nodded. "Yeah, unfortunately it won't happen again unless we create a more advanced genjutsu. Anyways, we can discuss this later. For now, let's rest." Everyone sat in a meditative posture. Fujin recalled Sora's words and analyzed the implications of such a jutsu. Though nothing could be seen on his face, his thoughts became very grim. Damn, no wonder Danzo and perhaps Hiruzen too chose to let Itachi cause the massacre. If a coup were to happen, I don't think the Uchihas would be a match for Konoha in a head-on confrontation. But with this jutsu, they could wreak havoc in Konoha. My memories from my previous world have faded a lot, but I remember this very well. Every single Naruto fan thought that the Uchiha coup was a stupid idea. The Uchihas were just no match against Konoha's entire might. They didn't even know that Fugaku had Mangekyo Sharingan. Everyone agreed that in a war against Konoha, they would be vastly outnumbered and lose pointlessly. But with jutsus like these, their chances wouldn't be low. They could plant fake memories into multiple ninjas. When they launch a coup, they would trigger these memories and cause chaos within every clan and prevent or delay them from joining the war. After all, we aren't at a war. Normal ninjas won't go around disrupting their chakra for no reason. And since Uchiha control the police force, coming in contact with many ninjas isn't an issue for them. More importantly, the way Sora spoke implied that they don't have a better way to control multiple enemies, but he didn't speak about controlling just one, assuming that they have stronger gentistus which can't be broken off normally. The Uchiha's chances of winning a coup would rise even more. If they could cast a genjutsu on some clan patriarchs, then they could even get allies in the coup, especially Fugaku with his Mangekyo. Obito was able to control a perfect Jinwekarake despite not having any genjutsu-based Mangekyo ability. So Fugaku placing some clan leaders under his control isn't very far-fetched. In addition, if they were to plant some fake memories into Ambai or root members, they could launch sneak attacks on Danzo and Hiruzen too. So the coup would definitely not be a one-sided affair. Instead, it would be a bloody war, a war that would shake the foundations of Konoha and likely trigger the Fourth Great Ninja War, a war that would likely wipe Konoha off the map. Fujin sighed in his mind. He had never taken the Uchiha coup seriously. even though the information he gained wouldn't have any impact on how the events progress. He realized how deep the waters in this world ran. A clan that was isolated and schemed against for years still possessed the power to shake the entire ninja world. He concluded, "I never thought I'd say this, but Itachi's actions make more sense now, with the Konoha leadership staying stubborn with their restrictions on the Uchiha clan and the Uchiha clan wanting to revolt. The end result would be the complete destruction of the village. His choices were to either see the village and his clan be destroyed, or just see his clan's destruction. That said, I wonder why Itachi and Shusi didn't compel the elders to drop the discrimination against the Uchiha. Wouldn't that have dropped all the plans of a coup?" Fujin analyzed for some time before stopping. "Leave it, I can't think of a reason that I can be sure of. Perhaps there were more factors involved, or the village elders convinced them that the Uchihas needed to be monitored and kept on the outskirts of the Konoha. Either way, this issue is way beyond my power to even consider interfering. For now, my main concern is, how the heck should I take that Grand Priest's body from them? Asking shamelessly is out of the question. I'll end up buried along with the Jashinists. Could I try to steal? No, they will keep it in the Uchiha clan compound. Not only do the Uchihas monitor it, even the Ambu and Root monitor that area. Should I try to tell Hiruzen? I could approach him innocently and tell him that the Uchihas lied, but does he have the power to take the body back from the Uchihas in that case?" Fujin analyzed this method carefully. After a lot of analysis, he concluded, it is too risky. For starters, the Uchiha clan and Hiruzen are at odds. Hiruzen might not even ask them for it. If he does, he will most likely mention that I reported it to him, and the Uchihas might get very upset with me. Though they aren't going to lie for long, I don't want to antagonize them when rewards aren't a certainty. Worst case scenario, what if Okihiko and the rest deny that and demand Hiruzen to verify my information? I'd be fucked if Hiruzen asks a Yamanaka to inspect my memories to get proof. Shit, there is no good way. Fujin thought more until an idea struck him. That might be possible. But it is still very risky, but at least my life won't be threatened directly. More importantly, there is no guarantee of success, and even if I succeed, I might not get what I actually want. He tried to think of more options before giving up. I can't think of any other way. Leave it. I'll just have to prepare better in order to ensure that my identity doesn't get leaked. Chapter 186. Concluding the mission, the Konoha ninjas rested for 6 hours. Everyone recovered most of their chakra. During this period, Miko and Shunko's wounds were healed twice more. The wounds that could be seen were all healed. Only the internal wounds remained, as no one had the expertise to deal with them. When everyone was well rested, Okihiko said, "Work with Sora to get all the children out. I will contact Hiroshi." He left the underground barrier and opened a scroll and laid it on the ground and made a hand seal. At the next moment, a man was summoned. He opened his eyes and looked at Okihiko and asked, "Are the children safe?" The man was a clone of Hiroshi, the leader of Kasagaka. Okihiko nodded. "They are, but we are very far away from any village. You'll have to call your forces here to escort them safely." Hiroshi nodded and handed Okihiko 6 scrolls and said, "You can summon them. They will make the arrangements." Okihiko took the scrolls. He was about to summon them when Hiroshi's clone bowed deeply and clasped his hands together in front of him as he expressed his thanks. "Okihiko-san," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I cannot express how grateful I and the entire Kasagaka are for what you have done. We will never forget it." He stayed bowed for a few moments longer, his head lowered as a sign of respect and gratitude, before straightening up and looking at Okihiko with a deep sense of appreciation. Okihiko nodded and said, "It's fine. We too don't want to see young children having to suffer. I am glad that they are safe." Hiroshi's clone smiled. Okihiko opened the 6 scrolls and activated them. 6 Junins of Kasagaka appeared. Hiroshi's clone instructed them to follow Okihiko's instructions and asked them to arrange for the children to be sent back. All 6 Junins used whatever means they had to send messages to the villages from where the children went missing. When the villages got the messages, they immediately sent their forces out to bring the children back. Meanwhile, Okihiko informed Hiroshi's clone about the Jashinists that kidnapped the children. Hiroshi's face grew grim after hearing how strong and numerous the enemies were. He upgraded the mission rank to S. Okihiko passed a few scrolls to Hiroshi's clone and said, "These contain dead bodies of kidnappers. You can use them to placate any anger towards you." Hiroshi accepted the scrolls and thanked him again. In the barrier, the Konoha ninjas made a tunnel to exit underground. Haru cancelled his genjutsu. The kids began waking up. The Konoha ninjas brought them out of the underground. They left the kids in the care of the 6 Junins and just stayed around to ensure that nothing unexpected happened. One of the 6 Junins had brought a lot of food materials. They cooked a delicious lunch for the kids to calm them down. The Junins also checked every child and verified whether every child was present. They sighed in relief after verifying that all children were safe and present. After a few hours, Kasagaka ninjas sent by the villagers began arriving in groups. They took the children from their villages and left after thanking Konoha ninjas. After the last group left, Hiroshi's clone handed Okihiko the mission rewards for the upgraded rank. He thanked Okihiko once again and handed a scroll to one of his Junins with all the details of his talks with Okihiko before dispersing into a rock. The Konoha ninjas left. Shunko and Miko were having trouble moving at full speed, so Genji and Haru carried them on their backs respectively. After a day's travel, the group returned to Konoha. Okihiko said, "Great work with the mission. It was completed successfully. I'll report the mission to the Hokage. Sora, take the kids to the hospital. Masaru, inform their parents about it. Others can leave." Okihiko looked at Fujin and said, "Fujin, I was a bit skeptical when Miko suggested your name. I accepted because we didn't have time to wait for someone else. But you have done a great job on the mission. Keep training hard." Fujin nodded and said, "Thank you." Uncle Okihiko, Shunko saw Fujin with some jealousy in his eyes. Of the 3 Chunings to take part in this mission, Fujin was the only one who wasn't injured. While he and Miko had to be hospitalized, Fujin didn't even have a scratch on him. The group dispersed. Fujin walked back to his home while analyzing what he should do next. "I have to talk with Teru and Hoka and check whether they are ready to form a team with me and Miko, though I'll have to check up on Miko first and see when she will be fit for undertaking missions. I also have to do some research to come up with a proper plan to sneak in. If I can't find and learn methods that would assure me of safety and anonymity, then I might have to scrap those plans. No point in risking my safe environment for rewards that I might not even get. In addition, I also have to learn vacuum cannon, and since it needs so much chakra, I won't be able to use chakra for anything else when I train. Once I learn it, I will get back to training lightning release jutsus. The next set of jutsus will focus on enhancing my body. They should be exciting. Anyways, it's late afternoon. Though the traveling and fighting have been exhausting, my soldier pill should last until tomorrow afternoon, so I might as well train like crazy today. I'll take a 24-hour break when the drawback of the pill hits me. Though I should check on Miko in the evening." Fujin made a hand sign. A shadow clone appeared next to him. Without a word, he flickered away. Meanwhile, Fujin rushed to Training Ground 23. He went to the center of the ground and sat to meditate as he went through his memories of using vacuum cannon jutsu. He visualized the jutsus while analyzing. "I wanted to make a very thin but long vacuum core. However, my attempt failed and I ended up creating a way bigger vacuum bullet core and hence managed to pour a lot of wind chakra into it, so it became faster and more powerful." Fujin got up and began forming the vacuum core. Soon, he poured wind chakra into the jutsu and expelled a vacuum cannon at the tree in front of him. The cannon hit the tree at the center. It didn't just create a hole in the tree, rather the impact of the jutsu exceeded the width of the tree. The top half of the tree was sent flying into the air. Any tree up to 150 meters in line with that tree was destroyed similarly. A smile formed on Fujin's face. "Powerful, very powerful. I don't think any normal defense can withstand this attack. The only ones that possibly could resist might be Reikaju's defense and Susanoo. I wonder how this attack will fare against Gaara's defense and Rashomon. Still, the preparation time of this jutsu is more than twice that of the vacuum bullet. The chakra needed is close to 8 times it. I need to modify the vacuum core to be more efficient for such a huge size. And I need to see if I can achieve a similar result by using less wind chakra. Otherwise, breaking defenses would be the only thing this jutsu is capable of." Fujin began working on his ideas. He tried changing various shapes for the vacuum core, but didn't have any success in improving the jutsu. He trained until his chakra ran out. Not having any success, he went to his home and freshened up and rested for a bit. In the evening, he bought a few dango and went to see Miko. After reaching the room, he saw that Miko and Shunko were both resting in the same room. He walked to Miko's bed and said, "Hey, how are your injuries?" Miko snatched the box of dango from his hands and said as she opened it, "I am doing well, it's just that since I was hit by such a strong lightning jutsu, the doctors want to keep monitoring my internal organs for a few days. I'll be released in 4 days." She opened the box and began eating rapidly. Fujin's eyes twitched as he said, "You know that they can't run away, right?" Miko said with her mouth full, "They ran away last time." Fujin needed a few seconds but realized what she meant. He replied, your mother, that makes sense. Ha ha ha. Fujin's laugh annoyed her but she kept eating till she finished every last dango. A smile appeared on her face. She looked at Fujin and said, now if she gets angry I can put most of the blame on you. Fujin waved his hand and said, running away is my speciality. So don't worry, she won't have anyone but you to yell at. Miko snorted in displeasure. Chapter 187 Vacuum Cannon Jutsu. Fujin said, I'll talk to Hoka and Teru about forming a team. Miko apologized with a dejected look. Sorry, I can't accompany you right now, but we can go on missions after 4 days. However, Fujin shook his head and said, no, take a week's rest. We will take missions when you are back to full strength, and don't worry about taking a few days to recover. I'll need some time to master my new jutsu. Miko asked, is it that cannon-like jutsu you used on our opponent? Fujin nodded. Miko snorted with some annoyance. You are getting stronger once again. Fujin looked at her with deadpan eyes. My eyes didn't evolve mid-fight. A grin formed on Miko's face. She smugly said, that's right. Fujin thought, I have always been curious about how Sharingan works, as every 3-tomo Sharingan wielder is ranked at Junin or higher rank. Is it just everyone's hard work or does Sharingan's advancement bring other benefits to the Uchihas? Fujin asked, by the way, do you feel anything different or any improvements after your Sharingan evolved? Fujin's question surprised Miko. She fell into thought. Even Shunko paid full attention to Miko. After some time she said, I feel like my chakra reserves have improved slightly. But the increase isn't very high, it's probably around 15 to 20. More importantly, my chakra seems to be slightly denser, and I'm guessing that my eye powers will be stronger. Fujin nodded and replied, that's a great improvement. He analyzed, not too overpowered. But still very good nonetheless, assuming that the improvements are higher when advancing to 3-tomo Sharingan. It would make sense why every Uchiha with 3-tomo Sharingan would be a Junin, especially considering that any advancement in Sharingan needs them to suffer emotional trauma or something similar. Anyone who experiences that will be more likely to train intensely. Miko stared at Fujin, who was lost in thoughts. She asked, what are you thinking? Fujin casually replied, nothing, I'm just wondering whether you'll have any chance against me now. Immediately a tick mark appeared on Miko's forehead. She muttered, one of these days I'll trap you in a genjutsu and do things to you that you could never imagine. Fujin was caught off guard by her reply. He thought, shit, since when did she become a pervert? Ninja village my ass, it should be called a pervert village. Fujin said, yeah right, anyways, I'll see you later, get well soon. He was about to leave when Shunko said, Fujin, when I am healed I want to fight you. Fujin stopped and looked at him and asked why. He said, though I don't want to admit it, you performed better than me in the mission. I want to fight with you to prove that I am stronger. Fujin looked at him with a deadpan expression. What's in it for me? He turned around and said, I have no interest in fighting you. Fujin's attitude offended Shunko. He felt that Fujin was insulting him. He shouted, are you afraid of fighting in Uchiha? Fujin replied without turning around, not really, I just don't have any time to waste. After speaking he disappeared from the room. Shunko was very annoyed. He asked Miko, is he always this arrogant? Miko was thinking. A fight between these two, it would be fun to see Shunko go crazy and rage in a few minutes. As annoying as Fujin normally is, he reaches the highest level of annoyance while fighting. Shunko asked again, Miko? Miko looked at him and said, you are just weak, Shunko. Miko's reply annoyed him even more. He said, do you think that a civilian orphan is stronger than all Uchiha? Miko replied, not all Uchiha, just you. If it was Itachi who asked, I am sure that Fujin would have accepted. Shunko immediately complained, hey, it's not fair to compare me with Itachi. However, Miko crushed every bit of his pride when she replied, why, aren't you the same age as him? Shunko was left without any words. He just turned his head away from Miko and sulked alone. Comparing him with Itachi was indeed very unfair. After all, Itachi was an Ambu captain, a rank that signified that he was strong enough to be considered as Junin and even go against elite Junins. After leaving the hospital, Fujin treated himself to a huge meal and returned to training. After experimenting with all shapes, he reached the conclusion that staying with the same shape as the vacuum bullet core would be ideal. He used the jutsu again but frowned. No, though this shape is ideal, something doesn't feel right. He sat in meditation to analyze where the problem was while he recovered his chakra. After running multiple calculations, it finally hit him. Right, I'm maintaining the exact ratios I use in the vacuum bullet core. I don't need to maintain the same ratios. I only need the deepest layer of the vacuum core to be huge. Shit, this is so basic. Why did I miss such a simple thing? He thought for a bit before sighing. I got too excited. I need to keep myself calm and not lose myself in celebrating little achievements. He formed a vacuum core in his mouth. It had the shape of a cone in the front while its body was cylindrical. A very thin chakra film surrounded it. It was encased by another layer of vacuum which was divided into 6 parts. However, compared to what Fujin was doing earlier, this layer was very thin. Its thickness was the same as it would be when Fujin used the vacuum bullet jutsu. Thin threads of chakra flowed through this layer of vacuum. Soon it was covered by another thin chakra film, and winds began flowing around it. Fujin opened his mouth and launched the jutsu at the tree in front of him. A smile formed on Fujin's face as it ripped through all the trees in front of Fujin. He thought, good, I only needed 5 times the chakra this time. I saved 37.5% chakra without sacrificing the speed or power of the jutsu. With some practice, I should be able to perform it at the same speed as vacuum bullet jutsu, and if I have enough time, I could make it more deadly by forming a much larger central vacuum core. With the form perfected, Fujin spent the rest of the night alternating between practicing vacuum cannon, meditation, and physical workout. He finally stopped at 8 a.m. He left the training ground while breathing heavily. Good, I only needed 20% more time as vacuum bullet. With time, it will improve even more, but there won't be any point in wasting more time to try to reduce the time needed forcefully. Satisfied with his progress for the day, Fujin went to Ikuraka. He sat on the stool and rested his arms and head on the table and said, "Bring me 1 bowl of every ramen." Since it was early morning, Tucci was preparing the essentials. He was surprised to have a customer so early in the day. I came out to see Fujin. She and Fujin interacted often, as Fujin visited Ikuraka rather often, and they were of the same age. She was about to say hi excitedly when she saw his state. She asked in a worried tone, "Fujin, why do you look so bad?" Fujin looked at her and replied without lifting his head, "Nothing much, just ended up training a bit too much." Puffed her cheeks and said, "I told you to not train so much, but you always keep training." Fujin sighed and replied, "Will you continue lecturing or get me something to eat?" Sighed at the unenthusiastic reply and left to help her father prepare the noodles more quickly. Fujin ended up eating 8 bowls of ramen before leaving for his home. He made his way to the bathroom and turned on the faucet, letting the cold water fill the tub. He grabbed all the ice he could find in his home and poured them into the tub and jumped into rest. With a deep breath, he lowered himself into the frigid water, feeling the cold seep into his bones. Despite the sudden cold, he felt a sense of relief wash over him, the cold water soothing his tired muscles and calming his mind. After resting for some time, he made a shadow clone and dispersed it. The clone that he had made earlier received his message. After a few minutes, he dispersed himself and sent all the memories back to Fujin. Fujin felt a slight headache but soon relaxed in the icy water. He spent an hour in the bathtub before heading to his bedroom and fell asleep. He ended up sleeping for 18 hours straight to compensate for exhaustion and the drawback of the soldier pill. Chapter 188 Unexpected Guest. Fujin woke at 4 a.m. and stretched his hands. He looked out of the window to see that it was still dark outside. He thought, "Damn, it feels like I have been sleeping for days." He began freshening up while thinking, "I am really not in the mood to train." Fujin wondered if he should take another day off. In the end, he sighed and left for the training ground thinking, "I won't get strong enough if I train only when I feel like it. I need to continue grinding. It's pretty much the only reason I have an advantage over my peers." He began with his intense morning workout. As he trained, he thought, "No wonder there are so few S-rank ninjas. I come from a world where such powers were a dream of pretty much everyone. And yet I am getting tired of the continuous training. For those who are born in this world, to keep training like this is very unrealistic. Only the select few who choose to keep training non-stop or are blessed with godly talent would even have a chance of reaching that level. Though, even those guys eventually stop training. Though Hiruzen is as strong as he is, I doubt that he has trained seriously in years. After all, pretty much all Kage bury themselves in politics and administration. No wonder Guy surpassed them all. After all, no matter what level he was at, he kept his training at maximum intensity every single day. Having motivated himself, Fujin trained as hard as he could. After the morning workout, he practiced the vacuum cannon jutsu a few times and rested for half an hour. After catching his breath and eating a few ration bars, he went to his basement. He decided, time to learn the next set of lightning jutsus, Rank D Burst Jutsu, Rank C Lightning Transformation Jutsu and Rank B Electric Skin Jutsu. Fujin made the hand signs for the Burst Jutsu. He transformed some of his chakra into lightning and began expelling electric currents from his body. If someone saw Fujin, they would see lightning flowing through Fujin's body. Fujin focused his attention and analyzed. Another easy jutsu, though it makes sense. After all, the only purpose of this jutsu is to teach new genings how to control lightning chakra properly. Its only battle use is that if someone is stupid enough to touch me while I am releasing such electricity, then they would be electrocuted. Fujin tried taking a step forward but had a lot of difficulty in doing so. He sighed and released the jutsu. However, while using this jutsu, the user can't move. The electric currents hinder my movements instead of assisting them, so anyone who uses this in battle is pretty much a sitting duck. Still, this jutsu should be quite useful to get my body used to electric shocks and allow me to understand how to release lightning from any part of my body. Fujin repeated the jutsu 4 more times. He didn't have any difficulty using it. He tried making the jutsu more usable by releasing lightning from just one part of his body but failed to do so. He concluded, looks like this jutsu won't be helpful for that. I guess that the way to do this would be to first manage to do this jutsu without any hand signs. Once releasing lightning becomes second nature to me, doing that will become very easy, but I should learn the other 2 jutsus first as they are quite similar but better. Fujin decided to learn the lightning transformation jutsu next. He weaved the hand signs for the jutsu. Soon lightning appeared on his body. His entire body was covered with lightning. He tried to take a step forward but suddenly stopped. That fucking hurts. The lightning around his body dispersed. Fujin shook his left leg while thinking, so embarrassing. The lighting around my body sapped my left leg. I guess it makes sense, as the lighting I released was much stronger than with the burst jutsu. Fujin waited until his left leg felt normal. Though it stung him, it was only for a few seconds, so he wasn't injured. He analyzed, I am not ready to use this jutsu yet. I should treat my body with the burst jutsu continuously and slowly increase its power output. That way, my body will slowly get used to electricity. Once I develop a sufficient degree of endurance, I can try the lightning transformation jutsu. A shame really, I was kinda excited to try this, and the electric skin jutsu, lightning transformation, will allow me to move at tremendous speeds, though I can't change directions. I can bounce off other objects till I reach my target. Electric skin jutsu also works on similar principles. It conducts electricity on the skin and boosts the power of any lightning jutsus used, and the lightning could electrocute someone who'd try to touch me, just like the other 2 jutsus. After I master these 2 jutsus, I will be able to move at speeds comparable to body flicker and zap my enemies on touch. Though it isn't comparable to Raikage's lightning chakra mode, it will still be very handy and should help me dominate weaker ninjas. This speed will be the basis of my lightning combat system. Fujin began training his body to endure lightning with the help of the burst jutsu. He increased the power of the jutsu gradually such that he would be able to endure, but his body would feel pain. The jutsu used very little chakra, so Fujin kept at it for hours until he realized something. Shit, while it ached initially, now this pain feels good. He was left speechless by the development and a bit worried as he muttered in a sigh, I hope I don't develop any weird fetishes. I have no interest in becoming another perverted ninja. Fujin kept training until he was interrupted when he heard his bell ringing. Fujin wondered, who'd come to see me at this time? He stopped training and spread his chakra field outside Fujin's door. A man was standing. He had a very peculiar expression on his face. He muttered, when did this brat learn Fuin Jutsu, and why the hell is his house covered in hundreds of seals? Even I can't be sure that I have identified all the seals. Fujin was surprised by who he sensed. He muttered, he is back. I wonder where he was for so long. Fujin left the basement and made a hand sign. The entrance to the basement was sealed and disguised. Fujin walked to the door wondering, will he be able to sense the basement? Fujin opened the door and said very respectfully, hello sensei, welcome to my humble house. Rinjiro's eyes twitched once again. He thought, your home is anything but humble. Knowing his student's antics, he sighed and said, I see that you haven't changed one bit. Fujin tilted his head and asked, why would I change, sensei? Rinjiro ignored his question and entered the house. He said, I have a lot of questions to ask you. Let me start with this. He looked into Fujin's eyes and asked, why did you get such a huge house and that too so far away from the center of the village? Fujin replied, Houses are expensive, and since I had the money, I decided to spend a lot just one time instead of worrying about switching houses later. Also, there isn't really anything else that I would like to spend my money on. I would have liked to buy the elemental stones. But I don't know where to buy them. Renjiro replied. Makes sense, you wouldn't be able to buy the elemental stones in the market. Lord Hokage has some facilities that allow Ambo to use elemental stones, so if you get an offer to join Ambo in the future, take it, Fujin thought. Ambo. Unless the level of a rank B mission gets elevated to rank A, almost all rank B missions are quite boring and not so useful. Looks like joining Ambo would be the way to get exposure to better fights, though I would prefer to join after the route is disbanded. Fujin asked, Sensei, how can I join the Ambo? Renjiro answered, it isn't in your hands. If Lord Hokage thinks that you are worthy of being included in Ambo, he will call you and ask you. Fujin said, Oh's all right, I'll wait then. Renjiro chuckled on hearing his reply. Fujin's words showed that he had no doubts about his capabilities. Renjiro asked, so when did you become an expert with Fuin Jutsu? Fujin looked at Renjiro thinking, as expected, he discovered them. Fujin replied, I learnt it sometime after our squad was disbanded. Renjiro stared at Fujin but Fujin didn't say anything. Renjiro asked, Fuin Jutsu is extremely complicated. I have seen extremely talented ninjas slam their foreheads on failing to learn Fuin Jutsu. You want to tell me that you learnt Fuin Jutsu in slightly more than half a year? Fujin replied, complicated? I found it pretty fun and easy to learn. Though it has a lot of theory and symbols, I sped up the learning process with shadow clones. Renjiro was surprised. He asked, you span shadow clones to learn Fuin Jutsu faster? You do know that it can be dangerous. Right, Fujin nodded. Yeah, it gives headaches. So I was careful with the number of clones and what they were learning. While speaking, he looked up at Renjiro. Renjiro identified the look in Fujin's eyes. He had seen it numerous times. Fujin continued, but my biggest headache was to use the shadow clone jutsu a dozen times every single time. Sensei, could you teach me the multi-shadow clone jutsu? Renjiro was left speechless. He thought, I have just returned from a 3-month-long mission, and this brat doesn't even take 3 minutes to ask me for a jutsu, and he does it so naturally too. Chapter 189 Another Get-Together. Renjiro replied, sure, right after you show me what you are hiding under your home. Fujin wasn't surprised. He nodded and replied casually, sure, that sounds like a fair deal. He walked to the staircase and made a hand seal. Renjiro followed thinking, meaning that it's not a fair deal. The stairways to the basement appeared. Fujin and Renjiro entered the basement. Fujin showed him the meditation room, gravity room and dodging practice room. Renjiro was impressed with his student. He said, you have done a great job with the seals. These are among the best training rooms I have seen. That said, no one puts so much effort into training rooms either. Fujin said, to be honest, the advantages they provide aren't very significant. I just had a lot of time on my hands and needed to practice inscribing seals. Renjiro replied, though the benefits provided by the rooms are very small. They will add up over time. Fujin nodded, yeah. Renjiro asked, why are the other rooms empty? Fujin replied, I don't have any ideas regarding any more training rooms. If I get my hands on some elemental stones, I can make a few elemental training rooms like in the tower in the Forest of Death. But that doesn't seem like an option for now. I'll just set up what I want in those rooms if I have any good ideas. Renjiro nodded. He realized that Fujin had left a lot of space for any future use he might have. Both headed down to the lowest level. A weird expression formed on Renjiro's face once again. He asked in a confused voice, why is this entire floor empty? Fujin had already cleared all the mannequins. He said, I designed this place to try new jutsus and have some space to move around freely. Renjiro looked at Fujin and asked, is this all you were hiding? Fujin looked back at him and asked, what were you expecting, sensei? An elemental stone mine? Renjiro's face went dark because of Fujin's question. He thought, his tongue sure has gotten sharper. He commented, nothing much, just something worth hiding. Fujin smirked in his mind while thinking, who'd hide something worth hiding in their home? That's the first place anyone would look for in case they are ever suspected. Fujin ignored his comment and asked, anyway sensei, you promised to teach me the multi-shadow clone jutsu. Renjiro replied, I am tired, I'll just show you the hand signs and how it is done. You can practice by yourself. Renjiro made the hand signs. Soon 5 shadow clones appeared around him. Renjiro explained to Fujin how the shadow clone and multi-shadow clone jutsus were different. Fujin followed his instructions and weaved the hand signs. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Immediately 5 shadow clones appeared around him. Fujin smiled. Another jutsu down. This one will be very helpful. Renjiro said, that's good, just practice until you have it down. Also, this is a forbidden jutsu, as it can lower your chakra to dangerous levels, so be careful of how many shadow clones you try to make. Having taught Fujin for almost a year, Renjiro wasn't concerned about him messing up as long as he knew how cautious Fujin was. Fujin nodded. All right, sensei. He dispersed his clones. The two began leaving the basement. Fujin asked, by the way, sensei, where were you for so long? Renjiro replied, I was assigned a rather long and difficult mission. I returned yesterday. What about you? How many missions did you go on, and anything interesting? Fujin and Renjiro began chatting. Fujin filled him in on his missions. Fujin's mission experience was as he expected. He was surprised just twice. The first time was when Fujin told him about the 13 million Ryo bounty he claimed. The second time was when he talked about the Jashinists. During the conversation, Fujin asked, are you aware of them, sensei? Renjiro nodded and answered, yeah, I had encountered one of their factions before the Third Great Ninja War, but they weren't very strong. I remember them because they had sacrificed all the young children from a village to their god and slaughtered all the adults. Unfortunately, they didn't have any information on where other Jashinists would be, otherwise, we would have wiped all of their branches. Fujin said, now that I think about it, even these guys never mentioned any other Jashinists. I wonder if their Grand Priest had any details though. Renjiro replied, no point in thinking about him, it's been a long time since we ate together. Let's go to Yakiniko. My treat. Fujin and Renjiro had food before leaving their separate ways. Fujin decided, since I am here, I might as well see if Hoka and Teru are free. He made a few hand signs. A multi-shadow clone jutsu. 2 shadow clones appeared next to him. Both flickered away. Fujin analyzed. My chakra was divided equally. I'll have to learn how to control the amount of chakra allot to this jutsu and distribute it among the clones. Though from my experience with the shadow clone jutsu, it'll be better to do so after I use this jutsu a few hundred times. Fujin's clones moved towards Teru and Hoka's houses. Unfortunately, Hoka wasn't home. Fujin's clone talked with Hoka's father and asked him to tell Hoka to come to visit him when he is back. Fujin's other shadow clone met with Teru. Teru was intrigued by the idea, but he asked for a few days to answer. Fujin's clone replied, all right, let's meet up at my home 5 days from now at 1 p.m. Miko should be completely healed by then. Teru quickly replied, all right, we will have food at your home again in that case. Fujin's clone nodded and said, sure. He dispersed into smoke. Teru looked at the smoke and muttered, will he ever come to visit in person? Fujin received his clone's memories. He made a shadow clone and sent him to inform Miko about the meeting. Fujin created another shadow clone, which flickered towards the library. With all the tasks completed, Fujin returned to training his body with the burst jutsu. For the next 5 days, Fujin focused on physical training and conditioning his body with the burst jutsu. His physique improved at a very rapid speed. He practiced vacuum cannon and multi-shadow clone jutsu a few times daily. In addition, one of his shadow clones stayed in the library for over 12 hours daily. During this time, he was visited by Hoka once. He too liked the idea and gave the same reply as Teru. Finally, the day arrived. Fujin was training with his chakra field spread. He opened his eyes when he sensed Teru. He stopped training and left the basement and sealed it up in a few seconds. A minute later, Teru rang the doorbell. Fujin opened the door. His eyes immediately focused on the bag in Teru's hands. Teru noticed Fujin's gaze and said, my mum felt bad that you cooked everything last time, so she sent some ready-to-fry prawns with me. Fujin took the bag and said, she is wiser than you. Teru smirked and said, oh, I am so glad that you like that. Fujin furrowed his eyebrows, wondering what Teru was up to. Teru continued, she has invited you to have dinner at our home tonight. Teru thought, I know he doesn't like socializing a lot, so was worried I'd have to hear my mother nagging. Luckily he dug the pit himself. At the same time, Fujin thought, I was kept hanging for 2-3 months due to not having any connections. So it's better to accept the invitation. If I am lucky, I might get a mission invitation, similar to how Miko got me on a rank A mission. Fujin replied, all right, I'll show up. Teru smiled, but suddenly his smile froze. He suddenly had a weird expression as he asked, just to confirm, you are going to come yourself instead of sending a clone, right? Fujin looked at him with a deadpan expression. He asked, did you and Yuri swap your brains? Teru chuckled awkwardly and said, it's just that I only see your clones making a visit. Fujin replied, "That's just for sending messages. Why would I send a clone to eat?" As they were chatting, Miko and Hoka showed up. Fujin invited them all in. Miko asked, "What's in that bag?" Fujin replied, "Teru's mom sent some prawns." He made a shadow clone who grabbed the bag and said, "You guys continue discussing. I'll bring chicken and prawns in a few minutes." Hoka replied, "Great." Miko teased, "Fujin, your clones are much better at cooking than you." Suddenly, all three looked at Miko without speaking a word, realizing how stupid her sentence was. She immediately became embarrassed and quickly went into the circular room while saying, "Why are you three standing at the door? Let's go in and discuss what we will do quickly." The boys followed her. Teru commented softly, "She is very quick to change subjects." Fujin and Hoka nodded in agreement. Chapter 190: A heated debate. Fujin, Teru, Hoka and Miko took their seats around the round table. Miko asked Fujin, "Did you tell them about the dialogue we had?" Fujin nodded. "Yup." Miko looked at Hoka and Teru and asked, "So what do you think, guys?" Teru answered, "It is a good idea. My current squad takes a lot of breaks between missions. If we form a team, then we can take missions continuously and reach the required number of missions for elite tune-in promotion quickly. But even if we reach the required number of missions, we won't get promoted anytime soon. And taking missions with our current squads ensures that we may be able to handle the mission even if it goes wrong." Hoka nodded in agreement. Fujin said, "That's true. But the current rank B missions are very boring and don't challenge us much. My idea is that we should take rank B missions that have a low chance of going wrong and do them rapidly. Even if we don't get promoted at the end of it, we may get asked to assist with rank A missions more often if our mission record is good." Teru replied, "That is true. I'm guessing that your plan is to reach 50 missions quickly with our team and then try being a part of stronger teams." Fujin nodded. "Yeah, that would be ideal for us, though it'll be better to finalize such a decision after we reach that stage. We may as well continue with this team if we can take tougher missions." Miko agreed. "Yeah, that's true. So is everyone on board?" Hoka nodded. "Yeah, I talked with my parents and teammates. I'm in." Teru nodded. "Same here, but why didn't you invite anyone else?" Fujin answered, "Well, the only other two I could think of were Hana and Yuri, and their skills would be very similar to Hoka and Miko respectively, not to mention that Hana is still in her Genin squad, so I figured that it'd be better to go with just us four. All four of us are good at taijutsu. We cover all elements except lightning. We will have 2 dojutsus and 1 sensor in the squad, so pretty much all aspects get covered." Teru thought for a bit and said, "All right." Since no one asked anything else, Miko said, "So now the main question." She looked at all three and said, "Who will be the team leader?" Hoka and Teru too looked at everyone. Meanwhile, Fujin thought, "I never considered this. Makes sense though, as every team needs to have a leader." Hoka, Miko and Teru prepared themselves for an intense debate. Hoka asked Miko, "What do you suggest?" Miko replied, "Of course, it should be me." Hoka saw her with a deadpan expression as he thought, "Why am I not surprised?" He asked, "Why?" Miko answered, "Because I am the only one who is an expert at ninjutsu, taijutsu and genjutsu." "You guys don't have any skills in genjutsu," Hoka argued back. "What does genjutsu have to do with leading? My ability to see up to a kilometer is more important. This way, I can pass orders quickly and get us more time to react." Miko said, "You can do that even when you aren't a leader." Teru entered the debate saying, "Yes, and you can use genjutsu, even if you aren't the leader. The most important aspect of a leader is experience, and I have been a ninja for a year longer than you three." The three entered into a heated debate. At some point, the Sharingan and the Byakugan got activated. Chakras began flaring. Fujin didn't speak and just watched with amusement. He thought, "Wow, this looks awfully like those pre-interview debates for placements in my previous world." The trio continued arguing for 15 minutes when Hoka's eyes fell on Fujin. He saw that Fujin was eating the fried chicken alone and realized that Fujin never spoke a word. He asked, "Why are you eating chicken and not talking? Aren't you interested in becoming the team leader?" Fujin answered in his mind, "Unfortunately, I don't have popcorn." He said, "It's more amusing to see you three arguing." "Don't worry, I won't let the food go cold." Miko suddenly realized. She complained, "Hey, don't eat all the food." Fujin shrugged and continued eating. The change in the subject made the trio calm down. Teru realized that arguing was pointless and said, "It doesn't look like we will reach any conclusion." Fujin replied, "You sure? Maybe another 15 minutes of debate might provide a result." Miko, Teru and Hoka's faces went dark. They realized that Fujin was mocking them. Miko said. All right, stop being a prick and tell us what great idea you have. Fujin put up a sad face and sighed. But I want to see you guys debating. All three stared at him. Having teased them enough, Fujin said, I don't recall where I read or heard this quote. But it went something like this: a great team is where no one knows who the leader is. Fujin's words made the three of them enter into thought. After a while, Hoka asked, do you mean that we shouldn't have any team leader? Teru shook his head. No, having a team leader is compulsory. Otherwise we won't get the missions. Miko said, well, we can just lie. Fujin interrupted their conversation and said, no, it means that everyone should be capable of leading. So we will take turns in leading the missions. This way, all four of us will become capable leaders. Teru replied, nice idea, I never thought in this way. Hoka and Miko nodded. Miko said, so now we just have to decide in what order we will lead. Once again, Miko, Hoka and Teru looked into each other's eyes. Fujin looked in anticipation while eating chicken. He could almost see sparks flying between them once again. However, Miko suddenly looked and pointed at Fujin and yelled, stop taking pleasure from our arguments. Hoka and Teru too looked at Fujin with irritated looks. Fujin said, hey, unlike you three, I live alone. There aren't many opportunities to see something this fun. Miko, Teru and Hoka ignored Fujin's lousy excuse. Though they knew that he was an orphan and felt bad about it, they never saw Fujin complain about it or feel down due to it. Hoka said, all right, you have had your fun. Now say what you think. Fujin said, the order that I think is ideal would be me first, then Hoka, followed by Miko and lastly Teru. Teru and Miko immediately complained, why are we last? Fujin replied, Teru, I put you last because you have never gone on a mission with us before. In fact, in the last 2.5 years, we have fought just once, so by leading last, you will be able to understand more about us three. Teru thought about it and nodded his head. He said unwillingly, all right, that sounds reasonable. Fujin looked at Miko and said, you're second last because you just got injured. Though you have healed, it will be better for you to take it easy for a couple of missions. Miko wanted to argue, but she recalled the medical nins asking her to take it easy for a week or so. She too begrudgingly agreed. Hoka asked, why am I after you? Fujin smirked and said, because you like to engage in pointless battles instead of taking the easy way while I do the opposite. Hoka immediately complained, hey, that's not fair, I only do it when our opponents are very weak. And it doesn't give them any chance at success. Hoka expected Fujin to counter back, but instead, he saw Fujin shrugging. Fujin said, well, that's pretty much all I got. The only other way I see is if we fight to decide the leader. Normally, Hoka would be excited to face Fujin. However, he frowned and said, you will just keep your distance and fight with clones, right? Fujin smirked and said, as I said, I prefer the easy way. Hoka was annoyed by his smirk, but he thought rationally, fighting with Fujin would only make me more annoyed and I won't win. Worse, if the fight becomes intense, I'll be left with a lot of cuts on my body. We may have to delay our missions if that happens. Hoka sighed and said, leave it. I'll be the bigger man and let you lead first. Teru and Miko immediately realized their opportunity and said the same thing. Fujin watched them with a deadpan look as he thought, man, woman, should I get them a mirror? With the order of team leaders decided, the group began enjoying the food. They discussed their abilities and thought of some combination of jutsus they could use. After discussing everything they wanted to discuss and finishing off all the food, Fujin said, we will start taking missions from the day after tomorrow. Let's meet up outside the mission center at noon. Everyone nodded and left. Chapter 191, Terrifying Efficiency. Fujin continued his training and visited Teru's house in the evening. Fujin expected that Teru's parents would be Junins as well. Surprisingly, his father was an elite Chunin, while his mother was a normal civilian. Fujin thought, well, that's a bummer. I thought I could make some connections with another veteran Junin. That said, it makes sense that not everyone's parent is a Junin. I guess my expectations were just high due to knowing Miko's and Hoka's parents. Since he didn't have any benefits to gain, Fujin let go of any schemes and just chatted casually with Teru's parents and enjoyed a delicious dinner. 2 days later, the group gathered outside the mission center. As usual, Fujin was the last one to arrive, earning him stares from all his new teammates. Miko said, you know, a team leader has to be the first to show up. Fujin raised his eyebrow and asked, says who? He thought. I remember someone who was 3 hours late on average. To stop Miko from exploding, Hoka said, Fujin. Fujin shrugged and said, it's still 5 minutes to noon. We can agree on an earlier time if you want to show up early. Teru sighed at Fujin's stubbornness and said, leave it. let's go get a mission and register our squad. Everyone entered the mission center. They saw Shikiro and approached him. Shikiro noticed them as well and smiled. Why are you guys here? Fujin said. I want to register a new squad and accept a mission as well. Shikiro observed the 4 youngsters. He asked, are you 4 forming a squad? They nodded. Shikiro was surprised. He thought, this is the first time I am seeing such a young team. Fujin asked, is there an issue? Shikiro said, not really, but are you guys sure? Miko said, we wouldn't be here otherwise. Shikiro said, all right, let me get the paperwork. Shikiro got busy. The group waited and watched him doing all the work. Miko suddenly had an idea. She looked at Teru and asked softly, Teru, will we have to do more paperwork while changing the leader? Teru thought for a bit and nodded, yes, but we can avoid it by not doing it officially. A grin formed on Miko's face. She said, let's keep changing our leader officially for every mission. It's about time that we got some revenge for those insane number of bandit hunting missions. Fujin and Hoka immediately nodded. Hoka said, that sounds great. Fujin added, I agree. Teru looked at the 3 of them in surprise and asked, how many bandit missions were you guys assigned? Fujin replied, too many. Miko followed up, I did 75. Fujin was surprised. He looked at Miko and asked, 75? Why so many? Miko said, he kept giving me bandit hunting missions till I joined a Nucha squad. I was so mad at him back then. Hoka said, me too. Miko looked at Fujin and asked, how many bandit extermination missions did you do after we disbanded? Fujin replied, just 1. Miko and Hoka looked at him with surprise. Hoka asked, why just 1 for you? Fujin replied, I remember threatening him that I'll plant evidence stating that he is the boss of those bandits if he gave me another mission like that. Miko and Hoka were surprised. Miko grumbled, I threatened him with violence and genjutsu, but they never worked. Also, my parents asked me to take those rank C missions. Teru watched their conversation. He finally asked, why did you do so many bandit hunting missions? Fujin said, our sensei took us to do a lot of them and we kinda gained a reputation. Leave it, it's embarrassing. Anyways, I like your idea, Miko. Let's do that. Shikiro was finally done. He handed Fujin a paper and said, these are the details of your team. Fujin read the paper. It had some basic details about those 4, and Fujin was mentioned as the team leader. While Fujin was reading the paper, Shikiro asked, which missions are you interested in taking? I have a bunch of bandit extermination missions lined up. He suddenly stopped talking and involuntarily stepped back. 3 pairs of eyes stared at him. 1 pair was as black as the abyss itself. Another pair of eyes were red and spinning. The last pair of eyes were as white as they could be. He quickly said, I'm just kidding. No need to look at me like this. He picked up a file and handed it to Fujin and said, you can select a rank B mission from this file. Suddenly, his voice became serious as he warned, don't bite off more than you can chew. Fujin nodded. He looked through the missions. Most of the rank B missions were escort missions for merchants or important officials. Fujin wasn't interested in taking missions that would be slow to complete. He began looking for target elimination missions. After looking through all of them, he thought, as I thought, none of them is in the Land of Fire. He removed 3 mission papers from the file and handed them to Shikiro and said, we will take these 3 missions. Shikiro was surprised once again. He accepted the mission papers and asked 3 at the same time. Fujin nodded. Yeah, they are close to each other. Shikiro read the papers. All are missions to eliminate rogue forces in the Land of River. Given the data, it's unlikely that either of these would be tougher. He looked at the youngsters in front of him and said, all right, good luck and ensure that you stay safe. Fujin nodded and accepted the papers and left along with his team. Fujin shared the mission papers with his squad and said, I have selected 3 missions in the Land of River. They are very close to each other and not very far away from the Land of Fire border, so if anything goes wrong, we can retreat to safer places quickly. Everyone nodded. After they were done reading, Fujin said in a serious tone, I am the leader of these missions, and my policy is always safety first. I am fine if our mission fails, but none of us must die or be crippled, so always emphasize more on our safety rather than the mission. Is this clear? Hoka, Miko and Teru were surprised by the seriousness in Fujin's voice. Miko teased, wow Fujin, you sound exactly like Sensei. Hoka agreed, that's true. Fujin sighed at their antics and asked again, is it clear? All 3 nodded and said, yup. Since everyone agreed, Fujin asked, is everyone prepared to go? Everyone nodded. The squad immediately left Konoha. The group traveled the whole day at top speed and took a break at a patrol camp close to the border at night. They got up early the next morning and continued their journey. At around 8 am, they finally arrived close to their destination. They stopped around 2 kilometers away from their destination. Fujin looked at the map and said, they should be around 3 kilometers to the west from here. Keep an eye for traps. Hoka activated his Byakugan, and Miko activated her Sharingan. The squad moved forward. Finally, Hoka said, I can see them. They have built a small camp ahead. Fujin asked, what sort of camp? Hoka replied, mostly bamboo huts next to a river. There are 35 people in the camp. Only 12 have chakra, with 3 at Chunin level and 1 at elite Chunin level. Fujin said, all right, that should be manageable. Let's get close and stick to the plan. The group immediately flickered through the forest and stopped at the outskirts of the camp. Fujin asked softly, are there any who aren't in the camp? Hoka checked the surroundings and answered, I can see 4 people in a 1 kilometer radius, but they don't have chakra. Fujin thought for a bit and replied, all right, let's ignore them. We will destroy this camp directly. Prepare your jutsus. Everyone quickly made hand signs. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. Fire release majestic destroyer flame jutsu instantly. A massive fire approached the camp. Since they didn't detect anyone, everyone was caught off guard. Only their leader acted quickly and weaved hand signs. Water release water wall jutsu. The water from the river suddenly flowed out and formed a wall between the camp and the incoming fire. The fire wind combo jutsu hit the water wall and went straight through it. Their leader shouted, everyone, escape underground. The few ninjas who knew earth release quickly escaped underground. The fire engulfed the entire camp and burned everything down. Over 30 died by being burnt alive. Their screams were all that could be heard in the vicinity. However, the attack wasn't over. Hoka saw the 4 rogue ninjas escaping underground and said, now both he and Teru slammed their hands on the ground. Earth released stone spear jutsu immediately. Spears formed around everyone who had escaped underground. The rogue ninjas had just relaxed slightly on escaping death. Not a single one was prepared to defend. A dozen spears pierced into the body of all 4 of them. Hoka watched and said, they are all dead. Fujin spread his chakra field to recheck. He said, yeah, none of those 35 survived, and there is no one in a 1 kilometer radius who can use chakra. Miko sighed and said, that doesn't feel like a rank B mission at all. Fujin replied, it is a rank B mission. Just that they feel too easy. This was the reason for forming this team, remember? Teru said, yeah, let's complete the remaining 2 missions today as well. Everyone began moving towards their next target, after completing a rank B mission in less than a minute. The newly formed squad completed another 2 rank B missions on the same day with terrifying efficiency. Chapter 192 A date. Having completed the 3 missions, the group returned to Konoha on the evening of the following day. Miko asked, will we be going on a mission tomorrow? Teru said, I think it'll be better if we take a day's break, otherwise the constant travel might wear us down. Fujin agreed, yeah, let's have a day's break between missions. We can have a longer break if the mission is tiring or if someone gets injured. Hoka agreed with Fujin. Miko said, all right, let's meet at Unik. As she spoke, her eyes landed on Fujin. She corrected herself, no, let's meet 30 minutes before noon on the day after tomorrow outside the mission center. Fujin's left eye twitched on seeing how she changed the time after looking at him. He thought, well, it doesn't really make a difference to me. It'll be the same if you show up 15-20 minutes before the decided time. The group left. Fujin was flickering to his home when he noticed, someone's following me. He immediately began sensing and saw who was following. Why is she chasing after me? He stopped moving. A few seconds later Miko appeared. Fujin asked, what's up? Miko asked while breathing slightly heavily. Do you have to run at this speed to your home? Fujin replied, not really, just save some time. Anyways. Why did you follow me? Miko began a bit fidgety. She said, well, I never thanked you properly for saving my life. I thought about how I should thank you properly but couldn't think of anything. So Fujin interrupted her saying, I already said that you don't need to thank me. We are teammates. I got your back and you got mine. Miko was about to nod in agreement but suddenly stopped as she realized, wait, did I ever have to save him? No, I have never seen his life ever be at stake. She said, that's all good, but I still want to thank you. I asked my mother how I should thank you and she suggested that I treat you to dinner. Fujin was surprised. He asked, what did she say? Miko replied, that I treat you for dinner. Fujin's left eye twitched once again. He thought, is her mother trying to set us up? Did she find out about Dango and wanted to get revenge on me or something? Seeing that Fujin wasn't speaking, Miko got upset and asked, what's the issue? I'm treating you to a free dinner, just come. Fujin was about to say no, but hearing what Miko said, he thought, well, if she puts it that way, then how do I logically say no? Fujin said, I am not a fan of eating dango for dinner. Miko complained, hey, who said I eat dango for dinner? I wanted to go to that sushi restaurant. Fujin sighed in his mind. Leave it, I'll agree, it will be annoying if she tries to find more ways to thank me if I keep refusing. He said, all right, let's go. Miko cheered upon hearing him agree. She said, great, follow me. She walked in front of Fujin, though Fujin couldn't see. A blush appeared on her face. Fujin followed, thinking, never thought I'd go on a date at 11 in this world. Though to be honest, I never thought I'd go on any date at all. Oh well, since I am on one, I might as well enjoy it. En route, Miko tried making small talk with Fujin. Fujin replied, but there wasn't much to talk about. After all, Fujin's life in this world was very monotonous. He didn't have a life outside of being a ninja. After many failed attempts of finding a common topic to talk about, the duo reached the restaurant. While ordering, they finally found a common topic to talk about. The topic was food. While eating, the two talked about all the delicious foods they came across outside Konoha when they were on Rank B missions. Fujin mainly talked about the noodles from the land of noodles, while Miko talked about an array of sweets. The two chatted for over an hour while enjoying sushi. By the time they left, it was very dark. Fujin said, I'll drop you home. Miko asked, all right. The two walked to the Yucha clan compound. Fujin walked with her to the entrance before saying goodbyes. As he watched her leave, Fujin sighed. She has a crush on me. I guess it happened when I saved her life. Fujin turned around and began walking home. He sighed again. Why does life have to keep getting complicated? Over the next month, their team completed 19 Rank B missions. They chose every mission very carefully. As a result, all the missions were completed with extreme ease. Fujin, Miko and Hoka already had very strong teamwork. Teru blended in with ease, resulting in even more combination jutsus, due to completing missions together. Their bond also got stronger. On one of the rest days, while Fujin was training his body to get used to stronger electric shocks, he heard the bell ring. He stopped training and sensed who rang the bell. Fujin thought, you've so much stuff happened that I completely forgot about them. He sweat-dripped a bit, thinking, for some reason, I'm a bit worried about my future subordinates now. He created a shadow clone and continued training. The clone went out and greeted the visitors. He opened the door and saw Daisuke and the other 4 orphans standing with him. Daisuke immediately greeted Fujin. Hey Fujin, how have you been? Fujin's clone replied, good, it's good to see you guys again. Daisuke replied, we tried visiting you 2 days ago, but it looks like you were on a mission. Fujin's clone nodded, yeah, I returned last night. Anyways, have you completed the leaf training exercise? Daisuke replied, yup, that's why we wanted to visit you. Fujin's clone thought for a bit. It's just over a month and a half since I asked them to do it. Isn't it a bit too fast? However, he soon realized. No, they have been using chakra for a lot longer than we were back in first and second years in the academy, so their speed makes sense. Fujin's clone exited the home while asking, all 5 of you can keep the leaf on for over an hour? Suddenly, he noticed them getting a bit nervous. Daisuke said, well, 4 of us can. Buncho is still a bit short. He can stick the leaf for 48 minutes. But exams are coming close. We only have around 3 months left, so we couldn't wait any longer. Fujin's clone said, it's fine. 48 is decent as well. Your next task is to learn how to climb trees with only your feet. His words confused them. Tatsuya asked, what do you mean by just our feet? Fujin's clone walked towards a tree and said, like this. He began walking on the tree. All 5 students were surprised at his action and got excited to do it themselves. After all, this was infinitely more fun than meditating with a leaf stuck on your head. Fujin's clone said, to be able to do this, you have to concentrate chakra on your feet. And your chakra has to be the right amount. If it's low, then your foot won't stick to the tree. If it is high, then you will damage the tree and be pushed away. Fujin's clone got off the tree and said, now you guys try it. Immediately, all 5 tried climbing the tree. 2 seconds later, all 5 fell down. Fujin's clone chuckled at that sight. He said, this isn't as easy as it looks, so keep practicing until you can climb properly. Once you do, you won't have any issues in mastering those 3 jutsus needed for the graduation exam. Fujin's words surprised them again. Buniro asked, will we be able to do all 3 jutsus easily? Fujin's clone replied, well, you will still need to train, but learning it will become very easy. Daisuke excitedly said, all right, thank you Fujin. Fujin's clone replied. No worries, you guys can continue training in the tree climbing exercise. Once you can do it flawlessly, you can come back to me. Also, unlike the leaf concentration exercise, you can't leave this one halfway, everyone said. Don't worry, we will climb to the top of the tree. Fujin's clone nodded and said, good, see you guys later. They said their goodbyes and left. Fujin continued his training, feeling better about his capabilities to teach his future subordinates. Fujin's squad continued missions as usual for another week. When they returned from their last mission, Miko received shocking news after she went home. She went home in a cheerful mood. However, on entering her home, she saw that her parents were dejected and serious. She asked, Mom, why are you sad? Her mother looked at her. She wondered how she should deliver the news. After a minute of silence, she sighed and said, Shiusi is dead. He committed suicide. Miko was shocked. Chapter 193 Dilemma Emotional or Rational Choice. Fujin had completed his morning workout and was about to enter the basement when he heard the doorbell. He checked and opened the door and said, Hey Miko, come in. Miko entered his house. Fujin noticed, she is uncharacteristically silent, and her mood seems down. He asked, What's up? Miko said, I won't be able to come for missions for some time. Fujin could feel the sadness in her voice. He wondered, what's up with her? I haven't seen her so down until he asked, why, did something happen? As he asked her, he could see tears forming in her eyes. Fujin sighed in his mind and helped her take a seat. He also grabbed some water for her to drink. Miko drank the water and said, Shiusei died. Mother said that he committed suicide. Fujin's eyes widened. He thought, so it's time. Fujin knew that Shiusei had mentored Miko at some point in the past. She had stated about learning the body flicker jutsu from him. Fujin said, that is sad news. Were the two of you close? Miko nodded. We didn't hang out much for the last couple of years, but he used to mentor me a lot before it. He taught me fire dragon jutsu and body flicker. Miko continued talking about Shiusei for over 5 minutes. Fujin just patiently listened to her while sitting next to her. After she was done, both sat silently for a minute. Finally, Miko got up and said, could you tell Teru and Hoka that I won't be able to come for missions? Fujin nodded and said, don't worry. I'll tell them. Miko thanked him and left. Fujin saw her leaving his home and involuntarily said, Miko. Miko turned around and asked, yes. Fujin sighed and asked, would you like to go on missions to take your mind off this? Miko was happy that Fujin asked her this. However, she said, no. My parents instructed me to not go on any missions for some time. But thanks for asking, Fujin. Fujin thought, are they instructed? I see, they want her to participate in the coup. So every Yucha ninja should be called back using the excuse of Shiusei's death. No wonder there wasn't any Yucha survivor other than Sasuke, he said. All right then, take care. Miko nodded and left. Fujin saw her leaving and sighed. He closed his door and muttered, I ended up asking her that. He sat down as he thought. When I realized that I was in the Naruto world, I decided that I won't form any relationships or be emotionally attached to anyone. I decided that I won't even make a lot of friends and won't be emotionally attached to any that I make. After all, this is the dangerous world of deadly ninjas, and I know for a fact that at least 80% of all ninjas would die in the 4th Great Ninja War. This means that any friend I have will have an 80% chance to die before I reach 22 years of age, meaning that unless I'm lucky or become insanely strong to protect everyone I care about, every 4 out of 5 friends of mine will die in the next 10 years. So getting emotionally attached to them could result in me breaking down, similar to how Kakashi broke down after the 3rd war, and I don't want to suffer emotionally like him or hundreds of others who went through the same shit that he did in this world. Fujin stopped thinking for a few seconds before letting out another sigh. Unfortunately, though my plan was right, I didn't take human nature into account. Due to having spent so much time with them, I guess I have become quite fond of Renjuro, Miko and Hoka, maybe Teru and Genji as well. Looks like I am not as emotional as I want to be. He chuckled and continued introspecting. Fortunately, it hasn't reached a stage where I would do something crazy for them. But leaving my emotions aside, is there anything I could do for Miko? Fujin began thinking. After a while he concluded, there are only 2 ways to directly get involved. One would be to stop Itachi and Obito head-on. Another would be to convince Hiruzen to lift the restrictions on Yucha and reintegrate them into Konoha. Unfortunately, the first option is pure suicide. I don't know if I can be strong enough to face either of them 10 years from now. If I do anything right now, I'll just die pointlessly. As for the second option, even that is very pointless. All it will do is expose the fact that I know about the coup Yucha has planned and attract suspicions from all the elders and Hiruzen himself. The attention would mean that I could be watched in the future, and my freedom will get restricted. Not to mention, I have no confidence in being able to convince them to integrate Yucha back into Konoha. After all, I doubt Hiruzen wants to see something like this happen, and he still hasn't been able to do anything to stop it. So my only reasonable option is to only save Miko. And the only way to do it would be to force her to go on a mission against her parents' wishes. Could I do it, and what would be the risks? Fujin began analyzing again. After a while, he concluded, I might be able to make her go on a mission with us, if I choose a long mission that would take us around a month to complete. She will stay out of Konoha when the massacre happens. As for the risks, there are two critical risks. The first is Danzo. If he is insistent on eliminating all Uchihas, he could send his root agents to kill any Uchiha out of Konoha. If he does, we will have to confront them. And I am not confident about my team's chances against them, especially if he sends a squad of only Junin-level root agents. The other risk is Miko herself, assuming we stay safe and return to Konoha. There are two possibilities I see with her. The favorable possibility for me is that the trauma caused by the news of the death of her parents and her clan makes her awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan. Assuming that she still has a crush on me, she could be a great asset to have as a friend as long as she doesn't go crazy, though Danzo may want to have her in that case. I doubt Hiruzen would allow him that. After all, though the elimination of the Uchiha clan could be considered a great feat for Danzo, it is also the death of his political career. Hiruzen won't let go of such an opportunity. I know that he will shut down the route, but with my few interactions with that old fox, I am sure that he will do a lot more. I'm guessing that he inducted a majority of Danzo's root ninjas into Ambu and only left Danzo's most faithful subordinates with him in case Hiruzen ever needs Root's help in the future. However, the chances of awakening Mangekyo are infinitesimally low. The more likely possibility is that she will reach 3-Tomo Sharingan, and that would make her a huge threat. After all, Uchiha's stone tablet states that they should kill the person closest to them to awaken Mangekyo. If Miko reads that, I'll have to forever watch my back around her if she considers me the one closest to her. Fujin began deciding his course of action. He struggled for a long time between his emotional and rational mind. Finally, rational thoughts won over emotions as he decided, I need to stop being emotional. Though I would like to see Miko stay alive, I shouldn't be putting my life and future in grave danger for her. After all, the events that will play out will be controlled by forces far beyond my capabilities. He made 2 shadow clones to deliver the message to Hoka and Teru. Fujin thought, it's unfortunate, but I always knew that this was about to happen, and there is nothing I can do to stop this. Now it's time to put the plan into action. I wonder who has the body of the Grand Priest. Is it with Sora or Akihiko, or did they hand it to Fugaku? To avoid constantly thinking of Miko and having a change of heart, Fujin began planning to get the Zankoku's body from the Uchihas. Chapter 194. All parties prepare to create a workable plan. Fujin had 1 clone in the library the entire time that he wasn't on missions. His clone looked through the entire library to find any methods and seals to help him find a way to infiltrate the Uchiha compound. After researching and practicing for a month, Fujin had found all the means to create a plan and try his luck while ensuring his safety and anonymity. He began the preparations. While Fujin was making his preparations, the Uchiha clan too began their preparations. All active Uchiha ninjas were called back. Every single Uchiha ninja returned back to Konoha. They began to prepare themselves for the war. Meanwhile, Danzo met Itochi in secret and explained to him what would happen when the Uchiha revolted. Once again, he convinced Itochi to take action against his own clan. However, while the two were talking, their actions were seen by one person. In his room, Hiruzen watched their whole interaction in his crystal ball. Surprisingly, neither Danzo nor Itochi sensed anything off. Tiredness could be seen on Hiruzen's face as he sighed on seeing his friend's actions. I would have stopped him. Unfortunately, the relationship between the village and the Uchiha clan has deteriorated beyond repair. His expression became firm as he decided not to interfere. While it's true that they were relocated to the outskirts of the village and monitored by Ambu, no Uchiha was ever mistreated by us. I can understand that they would be dissatisfied with such a treatment. However, this is no excuse for launching a coup that would destroy the village. On deciding the fate of the Uchiha, Hiruzen's eyes fell on Danzo. My old friend, it looks like you have completely fallen into darkness. This will be the last time you will interfere in the matters of my village. While the undercurrents were flowing in Konoha, Fujin was busy in his basement making a lot of complicated seals. A day after Miko told him the news, Fujin completed the first step of his plan. He took a deep breath. Finally, it's done. He made a hand sign. A shadow clone appeared next to him. The clone made multiple hand signs. Fujin observed the clone by concentrating chakra in his eyes. He could see that the chakra signature of the clone was slowly changing. Soon, it was very different from Fujin's chakra signature. His scent also changed. Fujin thought, good, now it will be difficult to link the clone to me. After the clone completed the process, Fujin applied another scent to the clone to make it look like he was hiding his real scent. Next, the clone used the transformation jutsu to transform into a honey badger. Fujin thought, normally, seeing this animal in the streets of Konoha would raise suspicions, but the Uchiha clan compound is on the outskirts of Konoha. If it appears there, it won't cause any suspicion. After all, there are many of these in the forests inside Konoha. After the clone transformed, Fujin began making seals on its body. He first applied seals that would increase its affinity to earth nature manipulation. This way, it would have an easier time moving underground and would also reduce any chances of it being related to Fujin, as Fujin wasn't known for his earth element. He followed it up by applying numerous stealth seals on the body of his transformed clone. Soon, the honey badger couldn't be seen, heard, smelled or sensed. Fujin checked his work several times until he was satisfied. Finally, he nodded and said, "You'll be responsible for the first task." The honey badger didn't reply. Fujin made a hand sign and sealed him in a special storage scroll. He created a wind clone who took the storage scroll with him and flickered multiple times in the forests next to his house, after coming to a very secluded place far away from his house. The wind clone opened the scroll and let the honey badger clone out. The honey badger clone checked his surroundings and moved stealthily towards the Uchiha clan. He moved under the ground so as to not leave any trails. The wind clone also left, after going away sufficient distance. He destroyed the storage scroll and dispersed himself. The honey badger quickly moved towards the Uchiha clan compound, but did not enter it. He had no intention of testing his seals against the Sharingan. Instead, he went to the route that Uchiha kids would take while going to and coming from the academy, and stayed there. The honey badger clone thought, the first task consists of 2 missions. The first is to keep an eye on Uchiha Sasuke. The day Sasuke returns very late from the academy will most likely be the day the massacre happens. And the second task is to see if anyone notices me. If someone does, I will drop all plans of stealing that dead body. While this clone kept an eye, Fujin created 5 more honey badger clones. They would roam through the forests and training grounds in Konoha to see if anyone notices anything suspicious in them. Fujin had calculated, honey badgers are rather common in Konoha, so a few more of them shouldn't raise any eyebrows. However, if someone is still able to somehow figure out that they are my clones, I can just admit that they were made by me and I was practicing stealth for missions. After all, I haven't done anything wrong yet. If no one notices anything strange, then I'll deploy them around the Uchiha clan. The honey badger clones would roam around Konoha all night and disperse themselves when the sun rose. Fujin experimented for 2 days before deciding that they were safe to be used. From the 3rd day, all 6 of his honey badger clones used to stay around the Uchiha clan compound. In addition, Fujin would maintain 2 wind clones at one secluded spot a few kilometers from the Uchiha clan compound. With the preparations done, Fujin just waited for the right moment. A few days later, in an underground base under Konoha, Danzo stood with a subordinate. The subordinate respectfully asked, "What job do you have for me, Danzo-sama?" Danzo looked at him and said, "Your triatamine bugs can induce sluggishness, right? The root ninja was from the Iburami clan." He replied, "Yes, Danzo-sama, they can cause slight sluggishness with their poison. And since it poses no direct threat and doesn't have any color or smell, it is almost impossible to detect." Danzo said, "Good, your mission is to poison the drinking water that reaches the Uchiha clan with this poison. Use very small quantities. Your main priority is that this poison isn't noticed. Once you are done, go to training ground 49 and wait for me." The root ninja was surprised by the mission. However, it wasn't his place to question Danzo. He nodded and left. Danzo watched him leave as he thought, he was a good subordinate. A shame that he has to die. Danzo called another subordinate of his and instructed him to approach the Iburami ninja in the training ground 49 and kill him and dispose of his body as well, though Danzo's subordinates had his curse seal. No seal was perfect. Considering the importance and severity of this matter, Danzo decided to take this step. This way no one other than him and the elders would know about the truth of the Yucha massacre. The root ninja from the Aburami clan did his job exceptionally well. Since it only caused a slight sluggishness, no Yucha ninja realized that they had been drugged. After all, they didn't have to move at full speed in their normal lives. Danzo made a few more moves that day. He ensured that no Hyuga Inuzuka or Sensor ninja was in the vicinity of the Yucha clan compound to prevent any interference. In fact, he had ensured that most of their active ninjas were on duty outside Konoha. Finally, on that evening, Yucha Itachi and Yucha Obito appeared in the Yucha clan compound. Almost everyone in the village was oblivious to the massacre that was about to unfold. Only 3 were aware of it and waited patiently. Danzo was busy with his root ninjas to ensure that Itachi wasn't interrupted. Meanwhile, he also had to ensure that his root ninjas weren't close to the Yucha clan compound and get caught in the fighting. Hiruzen had recalled all Amber ninjas that were keeping an eye on the Yucha clan. While Fujin was waiting in his basement for his clones to send him a message. Chapter 195 The Massacre. Since it was getting late, most of the Yucha clan members were in their homes with their families. For them, it was like any other evening. Their Junins were aware that they would have to fight a tough war very soon. So they cherished their peaceful days with their family, unaware of the tragedy about to befall them. As soon as Itachi and Obito appeared in the clan, both immediately began the massacre. Obito freely moved through the walls and attacked the unsuspecting Uchihas. Itachi too flickered into their homes. Since he was the son of the clan leader, no one expected him to attack when he did. They began slaughtering the Uchihas with extreme ease and stealth. While slaughtering, Itachi showed up in Yucha Akihiko's house. Akihiko was having dinner with his wife and children when he suddenly got up and turned around to face the intruder. He squinted his eyes on seeing Itachi, wondering what he was doing here. Most of the top-tier ninjas in the Yucha clan were disappointed in Itachi and slightly suspicious of him. Unlike others who didn't expect any attack from the son of their leader, Akihiko was on guard and asked, "Why did you show up unannounced?" Without replying, Itachi attacked him with his blade. Akihiko didn't have any weapons on him. He tried to move out of the way. Unfortunately, his body reacted a split second slower. That was sufficient time for Itachi's blade to slit his throat open. Akihiko's family were shocked. However, before they could scream in horror, Itachi dealt with them too. Some distance away from Akihiko's house, Obito entered Miko's home. They too were having dinner. Both of Miko's parents were at the Junin rank. Sensing that someone had broken into their home, they both got up and prepared themselves. Miko noticed her parents' actions and got alert as well. She asked softly, "What happened, mother?" Her mother replied, "Someone has broken into our house. Stay on guard." At the next moment, Obito appeared in front of them. Not identifying the masked intruder, Miko's father made hand signs rapidly without caring about his house. Fire release fireball jutsu. A massive fireball appeared in front of Obito, who thought, "Interesting. Their house had seals to alert them, unfortunately. I can't let this fireball explode." He stood without moving and let the fireball reach him. However, instead of the fireball hitting him, the Yucha family was surprised to see the fireball being sucked into his mask. Taking advantage of the surprise, Obito went on the attack without giving them any time. Obito's speed was much higher than the 3. Combined with their sluggish moments, they didn't last even a few seconds against him. Miko saw in horror as both her parents were beheaded. Tears rolled down her eyes. Her eyes began transforming as another Tomo appeared in her eyes. Obito watched her eyes and commented in a deep voice, "Interesting, to awaken 3 Tomo Sharingans at your age, very impressive." However, Miko was in no mood to hear any praise. She screamed, "Return my parents to me." She attacked Obito with all her might. However, a rod pierced through her heart in the next second. Miko coughed out blood as her memories flashed in her eyes as she died. She heard Obito's deep voice, "Unfortunately, you don't have the time to grow." As she fell down, she remembered the scene of Fujin saving her the last time. Unfortunately, she knew that it wasn't possible this time. It was already too late. She closed her eyes and fell to the ground. Obito thought, a family with 3 pairs of 3 Tomo Sharingans, how rare. In a flash, he took the Sharingans of all 3 of them and stored them before continuing his massacre. Itachi and Obito continued massacring unopposed. After some time, Fujin opened his eyes in his basement. The honey badger clone that kept eye on the route from the academy to the Yucha clan saw Sasuke running towards home. Fujin's other shadow clones also received the memories. They prepared themselves to move after a few minutes. Fujin left his basement and got out of his house. He analyzed. From what little I remember, there was some time gap between the massacre and the Anbu ninjas reaching the Ucha clan compound. That is the only window I have. Fujin became a bit restless, but he didn't move away from his home. This entire mission was left to his clones. In the Ucha clan compound, Itachi finally entered his house ready to confront his father, only to see his parents not willing to fight. Fugaku said, "I see you have aligned with the other side." Itachi controlled his emotions as he said, "Father, mother, Unc." However, Mikoto interrupted him. "We know already, Unc." Fugaku said, "Itachi, just promise us this. Take care of Sasuke," with tears in his eyes. Itachi said, "I will." Fugaku sensed Itachi's struggle and said, "Do not fear it. You chose this path, right? Compared to you, our pain will be over in an instant." He continued, "Even if our philosophies differ, I am still proud of you. You're a truly kind child." With tears in his eyes, Itachi pierced his blade into his mother and father. Fugaku looked at his wife as he died. With his last breath he said, "Destroy our eyes." Itachi understood his father's wishes. Though he didn't fight against his son, he didn't want his eyes to end up in the hands of those who schemed against his clan and led them down this path of no return. Respecting his father's wishes, Itachi destroyed both their eyes. With Fugaku and most of the Ucha clan dead, the coup was finally averted. It was at this moment that Sasuke entered home with fear in his eyes. He saw his dead parents. After a small fight, Itachi placed Sasuke under Tsukuyoshi and flickered behind Obito and said, "It is over." Obito nodded and both disappeared. Fujin's clones stayed patiently for a few minutes. They didn't look at anything, and instead focused chakra in their ears to pick up any sound. A few minutes after all sounds died down, they entered the Ucha clan compound through the ground. This was one of the main reasons why Fujin chose the honey badger disguise. They were known to be excellent diggers. On entering, all clones had a specific job. One clone headed towards Okihiko's house, while another headed towards Fugaku's house. One clone kept an eye on the entry route to warn others when the ambu came. The last two searched the Ucha clan compound to see if they could find Sora's house to see if he had the scroll. The clone heading towards Fugaku's house reached there first. He focused chakra in his eyes and checked if there were any active chakras around him. Fortunately, there were none. He thought, "Good, if Fugaku does have Mangekyo, then I want it." He got closer to his house while still staying underground but suddenly stopped as he felt danger. He focused chakra in his eyes once again as he wondered why he felt the danger. On noticing, he frowned. "Shit, his house is covered in seals, and I can't identify many of them." He analyzed the seals and concluded, "These seals shouldn't stop me from entering the house. But knowing what seals can do, I am afraid that there will be some consequences. It's fine if I am dispersed, but I don't want my main body to be implicated." That said, the rewards here are the greatest, be it his Mangekyo or the fact that the Grand Priest's body is most likely to be with him. He decided to keep analyzing until he cracked the seals or the amber arrived. Meanwhile, the clone that was heading to Okihiko's house didn't face any obstacles. Though Okihiko's house also had some seals, they were rather simple and Fujin's clone had no issues getting around them and entering the house. After entering, the honey badger clone saw the dead bodies of Okihiko and his family. He immediately began searching for any and all scrolls in his house. He found multiple scrolls. Fortunately, one of the scrolls looked just like the scroll Sora had used to seal Zenkoku. He immediately took it and checked it. He sighed in relief. This scroll still has his body. He put the scroll on his back. Fujin had inscribed a storage seal on the back of his clones before letting them go. After storing the scroll, the clone walked back to where he had seen Okihiko. He used his paw to open his eyes and saw that his eyes were still intact. He thought, "Good, his eyes are still intact. I saw that some of the Uchihas were missing their eyes. I guess that Obito took the eyes of the ones he killed while Itachi didn't." He summoned a container from the storage space on his back. He took both his eyes carefully and stored them in the container. He observed his eyes while analyzing. "Though I have no intention of implanting a 3-tomo Sharingan in my eyes right now, it'll be good to have them. If I change my mind in the future or have any particular need, I can rely on these." Since he got what he wanted, he left the house. He went towards Fugaku's house to meet up with the clone outside his house. The clone noticed him approaching. He appeared behind the clone and tapped his back thrice. That was the code for saying that he had found the body of the Grand Priest. The clone that was working on the seals around Fugaku's house looked back at his house unwillingly before leaving. They quickly dispersed to find the other clones, and soon dispersed into 5 separate directions. One clone headed towards the Akimichi territory. another towards Nara territory, and one headed towards the Senju territory. They dispelled themselves after reaching close to their territories. The last 2 clones moved towards the forests. One dispersed himself near the Konoha border wall, while the last one moved towards Fujin's wind clones. On reaching the spot, he came out of the ground and handed them the storage scroll and the storage container. He went underground again and continued to move towards the border wall of Konoha and dispelled himself close to it. This way, all 5 clones were dispelled. The wind clones used wind instantaneous body jutsu to reach another spot where Fujin's shadow clone was waiting for them. Fujin's shadow clone collected the items and returned home, while the wind clones followed the same procedure as the honey badger clones. Fujin saw his clone returning home. He accepted the items and returned back to his basement. Chapter 196 Aftermath Survivors. After entering the basement, Fujin sat down in meditation to analyze his actions. All right, almost everything went as I planned. My honey badger clones didn't leave any traces behind. However, if anyone still picks up on their trail somehow, they will be led to the Akimichi Nara and Senju clans. So the suspicion will be cast on them and there wouldn't be any clue to reach me, even if they speculate that those clans were being set up. They would suspect that the ones who meddled left the village from the spots my last 2 clones dispelled themselves, and as a precaution, I did the same with my wind clones, so I should be safe. Fujin opened the scroll and summoned 2 items. One was the scroll with Sankaku's dead body, while the other was the equipment that had Akihiko's eyes. Fujin first focused on Sankaku's dead body. Impressive. The storage seal Soryu stops his body's condition from deteriorating. I was worried that stealing the body won't help me much if I can't use it soon. But with this, I can work on this even after a few years. That's good as I have no means to extract information from this dead body right now. Fujin shifted his attention to Akihiko's eyes. I didn't make any plans to steal Sharingan. After all, I can't use them. I guess my clone just couldn't resist after seeing that they were available so easily. Now what do I do with them? Fujin began analyzing. After a few minutes he concluded, directly implanting them is out of the question. I won't be able to hide this and it would draw too much attention. The only way to use it would be if Hiruzen gives me permission. But considering what Itachi sacrificed to do this, I doubt Hiruzen would go around giving permissions to implant Sharingans. Not to mention that I can't tell him that I have a pair of Sharingans, and instead will have to ask him to give me another. So, the only viable way I can use one of these is if I lose one of my eyes in a mission. Once one of my eyes is blinded, I won't draw any suspicion from putting on an eye patch. After some time, I can implant Sharingan secretly, but is it worth doing it? Almost immediately, Fujin shook his head. The only advantage a Sharingan can provide me is allowing me to copy jutsus. And since I'll have to keep my Sharingan a secret, there won't be much opportunity to use them for that purpose. Not to mention, fighting with just one eye will be tougher. Considering the fast-paced nature of battles, it could even be lethal. I'll have to keep my chakra field active in all battles, which would drain my chakra. And there is also the matter of Kakashi. 12 years old Kakashi was a monster. His talent was almost unmatched. One could easily compare his talent with the Sanins and Minato. Yet when he became a Junin sensei at around the age of 26, he wasn't an S-rank ninja. Despite learning 1,000 jutsu, he still couldn't create a jutsu stronger than Chidori, and he could only use Chidori 4 times a day, so there is a big question on how much strain a Sharingan will put on chakra reserves if Kakashi not living up to his potential was caused due to the Sharingan. Then it's a big no for me to have. That said, there were other factors involved with Kakashi too, like him being depressed and spending hours in front of that stone, so the drop in his training time due to those factors could also be a reason why his strength wasn't that high. So I'm not sure how much of a role Sharingan had in restricting his growth, but I don't want to try it right now. In the future, when the growth in my chakra reserve stagnates, I could consider this option. Having made his decision, Fujin looked at the 2 items thinking. And now the main question is where and how do I hide these 2 items? Around 8 minutes after Fujin's clones left the Uchiha clan compound, Hiruzen led a team of his amber ninjas and entered the Uchiha clan compound. Danzo joined him as well along with some of his root ninjas. However, as soon as they entered the clan, they stopped. The amber and the root ninjas had performed many shady missions, but seeing the entire street littered with the dead bodies and blood of the members of the strongest clan in the village shocked them. One of the Ambu asked, how could something like this happen in Konoha? Hiruzen frowned and said, scatter and quickly check everyone, find the survivors, and give them proper treatment or take them to the hospital. Both the Ambu and the root ninjas scattered and began checking. leaving just Hiruzen and Danzo standing. Danzo said, "It's unfortunate, but Itachi did what had to be done. Now our village won't plunge into chaos." Hiruzen looked back at his old friend and said, "You went around me and did this without consulting or even informing me." Danzo didn't like the tone Hiruzen was speaking in. He said, "Hiru-unk." However, Hiruzen interrupted him. "No need to say anything. As of this moment, I am officially dissolving Root. The Root Shinobi will be placed under my command in the Ambu. The foundation system of recruiting and training orphans will be abolished as well." Hiruzen's words shocked Danzo. He realized that this would mean the end of any influence he had in Konoha. Even if he managed to keep some core Root ninjas under his command, he would be left with a very limited force if he couldn't train more Root ninjas. He quickly protested, "Hiruzen, Konoha needs Root to survive. We are the unseen ones who support the great tree of Konoha from the depths of the earth. Without the Root, Konoha would face a lot of issues without any means of handling them." Hiruzen replied, "Your actions cost Konoha its strongest clan." Hiruzen looked at Danzo and stared at his bandaged right eye and said, "And it cost us 2 loyal and patriotic youngsters with the Mangekyo. They could have kept the village safe for the next few decades. Unfortunately, due to your actions, we no longer have them." Danzo was about to argue back when Hiruzen said, "Say no more, my decision is final." The Ambu began returning. The first one to return was Kakashi. He was carrying Sasuke. He said, "Lord Hokage, I found him. He is still breathing but is unconscious." Hiruzen looked at Sasuke and realized, it looks like he was placed under a strong genjutsu. "Did Itachi also gain a strong genjutsu like Shusai?" he said. "Take him to the hospital and have the doctors look after him. Ensure that he stays safe." Kakashi nodded. However, he couldn't help but ask, "Lord Hokage, who killed all the Uchihas?" Hiruzen replied, "We will have to investigate. I'll let you know when we find the culprit." Kakashi wanted to ask more but knew that it wasn't the right time. He nodded and left with Sasuke. After a few minutes, more Ambu returned. One of them stepped forward and said, "Lord Hokage, in the area we investigated, all Uchiha except small children have been killed. On investigating, we realized that all Uchiha who were ninjas or academy students were killed. Only the ones who haven't enrolled in the academy are alive, but they have been knocked unconscious." Hiruzen frowned and said, "I see, take all the kids away from here. It's best if they don't see any of this. You investigate and tell me the total number of survivors." The Ambu ninja nodded and got to work. Hiruzen gazed at Danzo. Danzo looked back at him thinking, "As long as I can eliminate Itachi, I would have been able to integrate all the Uchiha orphans into Root. So the threat of the Uchiha clan would forever be neutralized and instead, they would be the most loyal and patriotic in the village. In addition, by using the death of their family, I could easily awaken Sharingan in most of them. In a decade, I would have had the strongest special force among all the 5 villages. But it looks like he figured out my plan and hence decided to disband Root." The Ambu and the Root ninjas sent all the kids to the hospital. The Ambu that had been tasked by Hiruzen reported, "Lord Hokage, in all 34 children are still alive. 19 are girls and 15 are boys." Hiruzen replied, "Good work. I'll leave the safety of the Uchiha children to you. Ensure that they stay safe in the hospital." The Ambu nodded and flickered away. With just the 2 of them together, Hiruzen asked, "Did you have to kill the ones in the academy?" Danzo replied, "In a war we send students from the academy to the battlefield. It's unknown if some of the Uchiha families decided to train the academy students and have them participate in the coup. If they know about the truth, then it will only result in another Uchiha coup after they grow up, so I wanted to get rid of all of them." Unfortunately, Itachi was insistent on letting his brother and the children alive. Hiruzen snorted at Danzo's reply and left. Danzo saw him leaving and had a headache. He thought with a frown, "Now how do I still keep the Root with me?" Hiruzen seems determined to take it down. I don't think words would change his mind. Chapter 197, The Deterrence of Uchiha. Itachi. As Danzo was contemplating his options, 2 Root ninjas flickered next to him and began reporting all their findings to him. They began moving towards a Root base. Suddenly, one of the Root ninjas said, "Lord Danzo, while we were inspecting the Uchiha clan compound, we found a secret message. We wanted to let you know first." That attracted Danzo's attention. He asked, "What is the message?" The Root ninjas spoke, however. His voice was now different, and there was no reverence or respect for Danzo in the voice. He said, "If any of the Uchiha children end up in Root, I will sell all the secret information I know about Konoha to enemy villages." Danzo's eyes widened as he saw the Root ninja turn into crows while speaking. A frown formed on his face when the other root ninja spoke in the same voice, and if anything happens to Sasuke, I will act myself. He too dispersed into crows, leaving Danzo all alone. He muttered, damn Yucha, while Hiruzen and Danzo were busy handling the situation. Fujin was inscribing a seal on his right forearm. He inscribed it right on the part that would be covered by his braces. After completing it, Fujin inspected it as he thought, good, the seal is completed, though inscribing storage seals on your own body isn't recommended. It isn't really difficult to do. Anyways, I have sealed the Sharingan Aizensaurus storage scroll as well. I'll hide this scroll in the seal, so there is no way anyone would find it. In the event that someone somehow understands about the seal and suspects something, I can always destroy the seal with a mere thought. He stored the scroll in the seal on his forearm and made a hand sign. Soon the seal disappeared. Fujin wondered, I wonder how the space that stores tailed beasts is created, and if I can store other things. Like this scroll there. Itachi stayed in the village until he saw Hiruzen was alone. He approached him and had a discussion with him. After getting assurance from Hiruzen that his brother and other Uchiha orphans will be looked after, he left the Hidden Leaf village and became a rogue ninja. Hiruzen put Konoha under maximum security. The next day, news spread throughout Konoha that shocked everyone to the core. Uchiha Itachi had slaughtered his entire clan. Only a few dozen young children were left alive when the news spread throughout the world. Every single ninja village was shocked. After the death of Senju Tobirama, the Senju clan declined in power. The Uchiha clan was estimated to be the strongest clan among all 5 major villages, and yet such a clan was annihilated by a 13-year-old boy. Both minor and major villages began having meetings to ensure that their village's security was up to the mark and discussed countermeasures in case Uchiha Itachi showed up in their village. Only one village thought about more than just defense. That village was Kumogaku-rei. In the Reikiju's office, most of Kumogaku-rei's strategists and elders were present. All were considering whether they should take any action against Konoha. After all, the sudden loss of their strongest clan would have shaken Konoha. After some time, one old man said, Lord Reikage, I don't think it's in our best interest to attack Konoha right now. Though they lost the Uchiha clan, their overall strength is much higher than when Orochimaru left the village. Most of their chunins who survived the Third Great War have been promoted to junins, and they have raised thousands of new ninjas. Besides, though the Uchiha clan had a lot of junins, they didn't have any S-rank battle power. If we go to war, the 2 sanins would return to Konoha. The 4th Reikage said, though their strength has increased, ours has increased even more. However, his viewpoint was opposed by another elder, and so have the strengths of other villages. If we go to war, Igawatga will wait until we exhaust our strength and jump in at the worst time. The Reikage frowned. At that time, one of the younger advisors spoke. We need to probe them to see what their response will be. If they cower like last time, then this might be a good opportunity for us to attack quickly and with full force. The Reikage looked at him and asked, Hari, do you have a target for probing Konoha? The advisor, Hari, grinned and said, I have just the perfect target for it. He opened up a map and explained the plan to everyone in the room. The people in the room were first shocked due to the information he provided. However, soon greed could be seen on everyone's face. One of the elders said, Great work. If we can get this, we don't even need to attack Konoha for now. After all, the profits from this would be mind-boggling. However, Hari said, no, this doesn't compare to what we can gain from Konoha. However, since this is so valuable, Konoha's response will tell us about their current capability and morale. If it is strong, we can dispatch more forces to secure this and negotiate another deal with them like the last time. If they let us have it, then we will use this place as a base for our future assault. The Reikage said, all right, it's decided. We will go with this plan. Dari, you will lead a team of 50 ninjas and claim this. Hari, you will accompany them as the advisor. Darui and Hari nodded and were about to leave when another old elder asked, Lord Reikage, what do you think about kidnapping some Uchiha orphans? With their clan dead, there won't be anyone to protect them. The task will be a lot easier than kidnapping the Huba princess. I fell into thought. After some time he said, no, even though the task might be easier, it's full of hidden risks. We don't know why Uchiha Itachi massacred his clan, nor do we know why he left the kids alive. If he intends to hunt them later, then all our efforts will be wasted, and instead we would have pointless casualties, considering what he has done. It's safe to say that he has the Mangekyo Sharingan that Uchiha Madara had. If we attract his attention in the middle of a war, our casualties will go up several times. The mention of Uchiha Itachi lowered the excitement in the room. Hari said with a grim face, Lord Reikage, we need to find a way to kill him. After all, he slaughtered the entire Yucha clan and is only 13 years old. If we give him time to grow further, he'd become an even bigger threat. He might become a menace for the entire ninja world. However, Reikage dismissed his concern. Right now Konoha would be the most pressed to kill him. Hiruzen should have sent all his Ambu and Jiraiya after him. Let them exhaust their strength on him while we make our moves. Hari nodded and left with Darui, back in Konoha. Hoka and Teru showed up at Fujin's house the morning after the massacre. The news of the Yucha massacre shocked them. Fujin invited them in with a sad expression. They all sat in a room without speaking. Finally, Hoka asked, "Did you go to the Yucha clan compound?" Fujin replied, "I did, but they have barricaded the whole area, and they didn't answer any questions." Teru replied, "Same here, but I got some news from my parents." Hoka said with a dejected voice, "Yeah, most Uchihas were killed. It probably also includes Miko as there was no news about her. Only a few dozen children survived." Fujin was surprised. Though he didn't show anything on his face, he looked at Hoka and asked, "Some children survived?" Hoka nodded. Teru said, "From what I heard, only those who hadn't entered the academy were left alive. Lord Hokage will make an announcement in the afternoon." Fujin said, "I see." However, he was in shock. Sasuke isn't the only survivor. Shit, did I somehow change the future? Fujin went quiet and began thinking. Hoka and Teru assumed that he was sad and stopped talking as well. After thinking about every possibility, Fujin concluded, "No, none of my actions should have any impact on Itachi's, Obita's or Danzo's actions. Even assuming Itachi saw me being shameless in front of Hiruzen, I doubt I'd be the most shameless or selfish person he saw. So it shouldn't have any impact on his actions. Regardless, how will this affect the future?" Fujin kept analyzing. The biggest impact should be a sense of responsibility on Sasuke's shoulder. Since he is in the second year of the academy, he should be the eldest and the strongest Yucha in the village. So he will have to take responsibility for the other Yucha orphans and lead them. And the question that this raises is whether he would still go rogue and train under Orochimaru. Fujin thought for a bit before realizing, wait, I recall that Sasuke had two goals. One was to restore the Yucha clan, and the other was to kill Itachi. But since there are other orphans alive, Sasuke wouldn't have to worry that his death would cause the Yucha clan to go extinct. He can completely focus on taking his revenge and restoring the honor of his clan by killing Itachi. From this perspective, the future shouldn't change. The only complication that could arise is if the sense of responsibility somehow changes him. Though that might not be a bad change. After all, Shippuden Sasuke was an asshole, even assuming that he doesn't accept Orochimaru's offer and doesn't get strong enough. Itachi will still die at his hands, and if he does go to Orochimaru, then he can't possibly get worse as compared to what I remember. Say, leave it. There is no point in trying to speculate so much. I always expected that things might not go down as I remember. I'll just act according to what happens in the future. While Fujin, Hoka and Teru were sitting together in silence, there was another meeting happening in Konoha. It was between Hiruzen and the elders who were discussing how to handle this event. Chapter 198 Hiruzen's Arrangements. In the Hokage office, Hiruzen, Danzo, Koharu and Homura sat. Everyone had a serious look on their face. They had been up all night, ensuring that the village stays calm. Homura said with a sigh, "Itachi stopped the coup. What are you planning to announce to the village?" Hiruzen, Koharu said, "We will also have to build a new police force, and we have to come up with a reasonable explanation to give to the clan leaders and the council." Hiruzen replied, "I have thought about it." But Anki looked at Danzo and said, "I hadn't issued the mission to Itachi. So effectively right now, the route will be disbanded. The route ninjas will be placed under my command in the Ambu." This news surprised Koharu and Homura. They looked at Danzo. They wanted to oppose but realized why Hiruzen took this step. After all, Danzo had overstepped his boundaries too much. However, they didn't want the route to be dissolved. Both looked into each other's eyes, tactically agreeing to ask Hiruzen to cut Danzo some slack. However, their short gaze didn't escape Hiruzen's eyes. Danzo began arguing. However, Hiruzen cut him off right away and firmly said, "No more discussion. My decision is final. You still remember who the Hokage is, right?" As he spoke, his chakra began exerting pressure on the entire room. Danzo, Homura and Koharu immediately felt an intense pressure bearing down on their old bodies. Breathing became tougher for them as they looked at Hiruzen. The Ambu who were on guard outside the room also felt an intense chakra. They looked towards the room with sweat gathering behind their masks. They didn't know what was happening in the room but their minds, which were in chaos due to the unimaginable massacre the night before, calmed down. All had the same thought. As long as we have Lord Hokage, we have no reason to worry. In the room, the elders analyzed whether they should resist Hiruzen's chakra. After all, Hiruzen hadn't displayed his full power. If they decided to, they could counter the current pressure. However, Homura and Koharu decided against it. If they did, Hiruzen would just overpower them. Homura and Koharu were reminded of the massive difference between their strength and authority when compared to Hiruzen. Homura said, "All right." Koharu also nodded. Hiruzen stopped exerting his chakra. The pressure in the room was slowly lifted. Hiruzen said, "Uchiha Sasuke has woken up." He talked about his interaction with Itachi. Itachi claimed that he did this to test his power. "We will report that to the village and the council. Though some clan leaders will realize that something is off and might even figure out the truth, I doubt they would speak of it." Everyone in the room understood that Hiruzen was speaking of Shikaku. He continued, "As for the police force, establishing a new one will require a lot of work and manpower. Also, the common people were upset at how the Uchiha policed them. So I have decided to abolish it too. Instead, the Anbu will take up that responsibility." Koharu said, "Even with the route, the Anbu won't have a lot of manpower. Are you planning to expand the Anbu?" Hiruzen nodded. "In a month and a half after the flames of this event settle down, I'll recruit more chunings into the Anbu. The Uchiha clan had the highest number of junins and elite junins. We will have to invest a lot of resources into the existing chunings and raise them to the junin rank as soon as we can. Even if we don't promote them officially, we have to ensure that they have Junin-level fighting capabilities." Homura asked, "What about the other villages? Though preventing the coup has conserved our strength, other villages may have some evil ideas as we have lost the Uchiha clan." Hiruzen replied, "Suna is still weak and Kiri is involved in their internal battles. They aren't in a position to do anything. The only concerns are Iwa and Kumo. But they are wary of each other, so they won't make a move." Danzo interrupted him. "I disagree. Kumo must have already begun making plans to take advantage of us. Have you forgotten what they did after Orochimaru left? Let me keep the control en route and I will ensure that they can never start anything." Hiruzen shook his head and said, "Even if they do, they will only probe us. As long as we respond according to what they do, we should be fine. Besides, instead of getting greedy for our lands, they would be more concerned about a rogue S-rank ninja who could massacre the entire Uchiha clan. By the time anyone is ready to make a move, we would already have defenses in place to deter them." The group discussed and debated a lot of other issues before they began talking about the remaining Uchiha children. Hiruzen said, Itachi requested that they would be looked after properly and be integrated properly into the village so that this event never has to be repeated. He also hoped that the surviving Uchihas would be well trained. Koharu said, "Well, we first have to move them out of the Uchiha compound. Letting them live there will just bring back the nightmares." Homura nodded and said, "We will also have to ensure their safety. Otherwise another incident like the Hyuga one could happen." Hiruzen nodded and said, "I thought about this issue. I have decided to have 4 Anbu squads keep a watch on them at all times." The elders were surprised. Koharu said, 416 Anbu ninjas for just 35 children. "That's a huge waste of our manpower, Hiruzen." Hiruzen replied, "It is, but it's the least we can do for Itachi after what he has sacrificed for the village." Koharu immediately stopped speaking. Compared to what Itachi had done, 4 Anbu squads were really not worth mentioning. Hiruzen continued, "I will move them to their old clan compound so that they won't be on the outskirts of the village and have an easier time navigating to the academy. In addition, I will employ some civilians permanently to look after them until they graduate. I'll also hire some retired ninjas to train them properly. Considering the trauma that they went through, it is likely that most of them will awaken the Sharingan. So with proper training, in 2 decades, at least half of them will become Junins." The elders were satisfied by Hiruzen's arrangements. They ended the meeting and got to work. In Fujin's house, Teru asked, "Do you two want to continue as a team?" Hoka and Fujin were silent. After some time, Hoka said, "No, Miko completed our team with her skills with fire release and genjutsu. We could find someone who is good at fire jutsus, but finding someone who is also good at genjutsu will be very difficult." Fujin nodded in agreement. Hoka sighed and continued, "Not to mention, we will miss her if we stay in the same team. It could affect our concentration on the mission and be bad for us." Teru said, "Yeah, I had the same worry." He looked at Hoka and Fujin and said, "I was a bit skeptical of the team when you approached me, Fujin. But I joined as it seemed like a fun idea. I am glad that I agreed that day. It's unfortunate that it ended this way. Who would have imagined something like this would happen?" Fujin and Hoka sighed and nodded. Yeah, the three said goodbyes. All three were sad. Fujin sighed. No point in being dejected and wasting time. After all, it was my decision to not interfere. It's time to get back to training. And time to take the next step. He entered his basement to continue his training. In the afternoon, Hirizen made an announcement. The entire blame was put on Itachi's head. His image was painted as a bloodthirsty lunatic. Following the announcement, they participated in the council meeting. 3 days after the massacre, a funeral was held for the deceased Uchiha clan members. All the Uchiha orphans had woken up and were present. All of them were crying. The entire place was filled with their cries, and with all the Uchihas dead, they didn't have any relatives to comfort them. A lot of other ninjas also showed up. Fujin, Hoka, Teru and Renjuro were also present. So were all the academy teachers. Renjuro looked very sad. Fujin observed the Uchiha orphans. Unsurprisingly, other than Sasuke, he didn't recognize anyone. After the ceremony and mourning, everyone began leaving. Only a few stayed back. Renjuro, Fujin and Hoka stood in silence in front of Miko's grave, paying their last respect to her. After some time, Renjuro broke the silence. Fujin and Hoka could feel the sadness in his voice. He said, "I never spoke about this with you. Before you, I had trained another group of academy students." Fujin and Hoka listened to his words carefully. Chapter 199 Renjuro's past Hoka's conviction. Renjuro continued, "They weren't as talented as you three, but they were very cheerful and worked hard. After 2 years of training under me, they were all promoted to Chunnings. I was very proud and fond of them. Unfortunately, at the start of the Third Great Ninja War, the army they were a part of was ambushed by an elite army of Kumagakure led by the current Trackage and the Jinwekuric of Eight-Tailed Beast. The entire army was annihilated with no survivors. We never even got their dead bodies back." He stayed silent for some time. Fujin and Hoka didn't disturb him. He continued, "In the war, I was deployed on the coastline the entire time, so I never had any opportunity to seek justice for them. Even if I did, I doubt I'd be able to take revenge on a future Kaige and a perfect Jinwekuric. The sorrow made me determined to never take another squad of fresh Genins as students, until Lord Heikade forced me to train you guys. Seeing your talent, I was convinced that as long as you three grew up safely, there won't be many who could kill you. At worst, you will always be able to abandon the mission and escape." He stopped talking for a minute before sighing. "However, I never imagined that my student would die in the village rather than on the battlefield." He placed his hands on Fujin's and Hoka's heads and said gently, "Ensure that you two stay safe and alive. Don't make me attend the funerals of all the students I trained." Fujin and Hoka said, "Yes, Sensei." Renjuro had a sad smile on his face. He left, leaving Fujin and Hoka alone. Both stood in front of Miko's grave silently for some time. After a few minutes, Hoka asked, "Do you have any plans, Fujin?" Fujin shook his head and said, "No, I just plan to focus a lot on training. The next time something like this happens, I hope to have the power to make a difference." Hoka heard him. He didn't understand how Fujin could have made a difference in this matter. But he understood why Fujin wanted to become stronger. He said, "Let's both train, Fujin. I want to hunt down Uchiha Itachi." His words shocked Fujin, who immediately looked at him. Though he was very serious a moment ago, he couldn't help but think, "Shit, Renjuro will lose another student." He eliminated that thought from his head and said, "He slaughtered his entire clan. I went on a mission with Miko earlier and saw how strong the Junins in their clan were. I doubt we both together could beat one. And yet Itachi, who is only 1 year older than us, killed the entire clan." Hoka frowned, he thought, and said he let the power go into his head. "As long as he doesn't keep getting stronger and we keep training, we will eventually catch up with him. Then we can make a move." Once again, Hoka surprised Fujin. This time it was the conviction with which he spoke. Fujin looked into his eyes and stared at him. However, Hoka's gaze didn't falter. Fujin smiled and said, "Yeah, eventually we will be stronger." He raised his fist and said, 3 years. Hoka was confused. Fujin continued, "I will gain the Junin rank officially in 3 years and challenge Sensei to a fight. I know you have never managed to beat me. If you want to hunt Itachi, beat me when we meet after 3 years. This time Hoka was surprised by Fujin's confidence. Hoka smiled and bumped Fujin's fist. Both left in different directions. Fujin smiled, thinking, if he stays true to the decision he made today, Hoka will get strong, very strong. I wonder what an S-rank Hyuga would be like. But regardless, chasing after Itachi is suicide. Not to mention his own prowess, there will also be Kisame or Juzo with him. And with Setsu monitoring everything, Obito too could get involved. So it's best that I don't let Hoka seek a pointless death. After all, Miko is already dead and it isn't really Itachi's fault." If anyone has to be blamed, then it would be Obito, the village elders, and the Uchiha clan higher-ups. Fujin walked to his home. His little chat with Hoka motivated him to increase his training intensity significantly. He entered the basement and decided, my body is sufficiently trained to resist and endure electric shocks. It's time to train lightning transformation jutsu. Fujin clenched his fists. Immediately lightning covered his entire body. The long time that he had spent training his body with the burst jutsu helped him to generate lightning and flow it through his body without making any hand signs. Fujin took a step forward. In a blink of an eye, he reached the walls of the basement. He immediately focused chakra on his feet and exerted force on the ground to stop himself from crashing into the wall. When he stopped, the wall was only an inch from his nose. He thought, shit, if I wasn't already used to traveling at high speeds, this would have ended badly. This jutsu speed is good, but it doesn't provide any control. No wonder the scroll said that the only way to move freely with this is to use obstacles like trees or rocks to change direction. And though the speed this jutsu provides is high, it isn't as fast as flickering when it comes to traveling, and also takes a lot more chakra than it. However, on the plus side, in a battlefield that doesn't have a lot of space, this jutsu will be quite strong. Especially if the fight is inside a cave, or if the battle situation doesn't allow me to move away long distances using flicker. Having analyzed the advantages and disadvantages of the jutsu, Fujin began training it. 6 hours later, Fujin was standing with his back to the wall. He observed all the pillars in the basement. In addition to the pillars, there were 6 mannequins in the basement. Lightning began flowing through Fujin's body. He bent at his knees slightly and disappeared from his spot. In the basement, lightning could be seen bouncing between pillars. Fujin suddenly appeared before one of the pillars. His left fist was clenched. Chakra had been concentrated on the fist. Fujin punched the mannequin. The force of Fujin's punch caused the mannequin to explode. Chunks of metal got launched across the room and crashed into the pillars and the wall. Due to the seals Fujin had inscribed on the pillars and walls, the metal pieces bounced back without damaging them. A smile could be seen on Fujin's face. He analyzed. Senju Taijutsu style along with this jutsu is a very powerful combination. I doubt many would survive this unharmed. However, his smile faded as he concluded, unfortunately, this is the limit of this jutsu. No matter how much I try, I can't keep this jutsu on continuously. After I attack once, all the lightning flowing in my body disappears. I tried generating more lightning, but even that didn't work. It looks like this is the limitation of lightning transformation jutsu. So, I thought I could match Raikage's speed aspect with this jutsu, though it's understandable as it is only a rank T jutsu. So the Hiruzen or whoever tried to copy the Raikage only reached this level of efficiency, or they are hiding what they achieved and only put a subpar version in the academy. Fujin stopped practicing and went to the meditation room. He sat in meditation to analyze whether he could modify the jutsu to ensure that it stays on for a long time, as long as he continues pouring in chakra. After an hour, Fujin let out a sigh. He concluded, no, the limitation is due to the way the chakra is manipulated. If I have to go past it, I'll have to change the way chakra flows. Unfortunately, I have no experience in this. I am not sure if I could do something like this even with wind jutsus, even if I start experimenting. I'll probably need years of experimentation until I get lucky and find the right way. It's not worth it. I will just have to stick with this until I find a more advanced version or become an expert in lightning element to create my own jutsus. Fujin decided to rest for the day. The next day, Fujin began training the electric skin jutsu. Fujin weaved the hand signs. An electric layer formed along his skin. Fujin observed, it doesn't boost me physically like the lightning transformation jutsu. But if anyone hits me, then the attacker will get zapped just like in the burst and lightning transformation jutsu. Alright, let's see how this works. He began making hand signs. Lightning release lightning beam jutsu. A beam of lightning was released from Fujin's hands. It hit a mannequin head-on and destroyed it. Fujin analyzed. Looks like the power of my jutsu has increased by almost 50. I guess the Jashinist priest that Miko and I fought used this to increase the power of his lightning jutsu before he went on a rampage during the final clash. If I can use this without any hand signs every time before I use a lightning jutsu, it could be considered as me permanently boosting the power of my lightning jutsus. Yeah, I should do that. While I am training, I'll use this jutsu every time before using a lightning jutsu. Over time, I will be able to do this instinctively and without wasting any time. Chapter 200 Telescope Technique vs. Seals. Fujin was happy with the progress he was making. He decided, I should take a few months off and learn all the jutsus that I decided to learn. After all, I completed a lot of missions in the last month. Combined with my team disbanding, it shouldn't raise any eyebrows. Having made a decision, Fujin began making hand signs. A lightning release force darkness jutsu. He stretched his arms forward. Lightning was launched from his palms. Fujin aimed it at a mannequin. However, right before the jutsu hit it, Fujin changed its direction. It barely missed the mannequin. Fujin analyzed. This jutsu's power output is much weaker than lightning beam. But with training, I'll be able to maneuver this jutsu more freely. So in a usual battle, Force Darkness will be much more effective. Lightning Beam, on the other hand, will be more effective when used on a stationary object, an immobilized enemy, or when I want to use it to confront an enemy's jutsu head-on. Fujin continued training Force Darkness jutsu until he ran out of chakra. For the next 2 days, he trained the jutsu until he could perform it seamlessly. Fujin weaved the same hand signs and performed the jutsu. He aimed the lightning at a mannequin. Right before he hit it, he changed its direction to another mannequin. He repeated it once again and changed its direction to third mannequin, and scored a direct hit. Fujin smiled while breathing heavily. He concluded, "Shit, it isn't easy to train 2 rank B jutsus at the same time. It puts a lot of strain on my chakra reserves. Lightning jutsus use a lot more chakra than wind jutsus. Still, it looks like this jutsu is down, though I haven't reduced the hand signs required. It's fine. Reducing or even eliminating hand signs will require months of training. I can do that slowly over a few years. Anyways, it's time to practice the next jutsu." Fujin weaved hand signs. Lightning appeared on his body. After a second, the lightning changed its shape. It began taking the shape of needles. However, suddenly they collapsed. The lightning on his body dispersed as well. Fujin frowned. This jutsu is tough. He kept trying. On his 14th try, he finally managed to make the lightning on his body change shape to needles. His body had dozens of lightning needles pointing away from him. He made another hand sign. Immediately, all the lightning needles were launched. They traveled around 5 meters before dispersing into the air. Fujin sighed. This jutsu is tough, though I guess the difficulty makes sense. After all, it isn't simple like just generating and launching lightning. The scroll said that hundreds or even thousands of small needles can be formed, and they can be launched for around 40 meters around the user. In addition, the user can also control the part of the body on which the needles are formed. This way, the user can avoid hitting allies. Fujin kept training the electric needle spread jutsu. 5 days later, Hiruzen was sitting at his desk going through the paperwork. The Yucha massacre had increased his workload numerous times. He had to check files on every dead Yucha ninja, classify them as dead, and analyze any impact their death might have. He had been working on it for over a week. With a sigh, he closed one file and handed it to his assistant. His assistant handed him the next file. The file was titled, Yucha Miko. Hiruzen opened and read all her data. He analyzed. She didn't have much contact outside her clan, just her genin squad. Rinjuro should be fine. He is used to dealing with such events. He looked at his assistant and asked, "Toko, have Hoka or Fujin taken any missions after the incident?" Toko grabbed some files and began checking. Hiruzen looked at Miko's file again and wondered, why did Fujin leave to Mattis's squad and form one with his teammates and classmates? Hiruzen said, "Also check onto Mattis's file and see what he is doing." Toko said, "Yes, Hokage-sama," while Toko was taking a look at the files. Hiruzen decided, "I wonder how that greedy kid is doing. Hoka has his parents to look after him, so he should be fine. But Fujin is an orphan. I don't think he understands how to deal with a loss." Hiruzen looked into the crystal ball on his table and channeled his chakra into it. Soon, a picture appeared on the crystal ball. It was Fujin's house. A peculiar expression appeared on Hiruzen's face as he thought, "I heard Taklo say that Fujin's house was too extravagant. I now see why he said so. Even my house isn't as big as his." He focused on the crystal ball to peer into Fujin's house. However, Hiruzen was surprised. "My telescope jutsu can't look into his house. Did he hire a seal master to inscribe anti-spy seals?" "No, I have specifically instructed every seal master to not inscribe seals that stop my jutsu. Only a few with authority like the clan leaders or strong ninjas can go around it and get those seals on their houses." So how did Fujin manage to convince a seal master to inscribe this seal on his house? Hiruzen was intrigued. A smile formed on his face. Fujin's shamelessness and his talent in wind nature manipulation had already impressed Hiruzen. So did Fujin's performance against Kaminari. He didn't expect Fujin to surprise him once again so soon. He concentrated on the crystal ball. Soon, the seals that were inscribed on his house began appearing in the crystal ball. Every seal was glowing lightly in different colors. The walls of Fujin's house began fading in darkness, only leaving the seals visible in the crystal ball. Hiruzen had a smile on his face at the start. However, soon his smile faded away. Half a minute later, shock could be seen on his face. Toko found the information and approached Hiruzen. He said, Hokage however. He stopped talking when he noticed the shock on Hiruzen's face. The Yucha massacre had put him on edge. Seeing Hiruzen shocked worried him. He quickly asked, did something happen, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen snapped out of it and shook his head. He said, no, everything is all right. Report what you found. Toko didn't understand why Hiruzen said no, but it wasn't his job to inquire about that. He began reporting. Fujin and Hoka haven't taken any mission post the incident. They had created a team with Yucha Miko and Senju Teru. Senju Teru has returned to his old team, so I believe their team has disbanded. I have some additional information regarding Fujin. Apparently, there is a record of him using Training Ground 23 every day when he wasn't out of the village on mission, but for the last 10 days. He hasn't used the training ground. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes on hearing that. He thought, I guess losing his team member did hit him hard. Unfortunately, this is a part of being a ninja. It'll be a shame if he loses his interest in being a ninja due to this. Otoko continued. As for Tomatis, their last mission was tougher than the estimated rank B. One of their team members got injured. They seem to have taken a break after that mission. Hiruzen said, all right, send a messenger to Tomatis. Ask him to visit me at the earliest. Toko replied, I will get it done, Hokage-sama. He left the room. Hiruzen turned his attention to the crystal ball. He thought, which crazy person inscribed over 2,500 seals on his house? It's as if every seal in the library under rank A is inscribed on his house. No wonder I couldn't peer into it. Should I ask Fujin about it? He thought for a bit and concluded, no, he may get offended or on guard if he learns that I was trying to spy on him. Worse, he might accuse me of violating his right to privacy and ask for some compensation from me. I'll ask Renjiro when he gets back from the mission. Later that day, Fujin was visited by Tomatis. Fujin was surprised. He stopped his training and greeted him. Tomatis entered his house and said, hey, how have you been, Fujin? Fujin replied, I am all right, Tomatis. How is Katsumi? Tomatis said, he has recovered well. We are planning to start taking missions again. I came here to see whether you are interested in returning to the team. Fujin was surprised. He thought, it hasn't been 3 months since we took a break. Did Hiruzen ask every team that is available to take missions? He looked at Tomatis and said, I would love to, but I have been on missions continuously for the last month and a half, so I am planning to take a few months off. I'll rejoin the team when I am ready. Tomatis watched Fujin carefully as he spoke. He got a bit worried as he recalled his conversation with Hiruzen. Hiruzen was worried that Fujin was depressed and hence wanted Tomatis to take him along with him on missions to distract him and revive his interest in training. Tomatis said, Fujin, I am aware that you might be hurt due to losing a teammate. However, the best way to deal with situations like this is by interacting with others. If you stay alone and keep thinking about it, you'll be more depressed. Fujin was confused. He thought, what the hell, he is worried about me. If so, why did he take 10 days to visit me? No, I don't think I ever told him that I formed a team with Miko and others. Tomatis continued, come with us for this mission. If you still think that you need rest, you can take it after this mission. Fujin thought for a bit, but he couldn't find a reasonable excuse to say no. He agreed. Tomatis smiled and said, good, come to the mission center tomorrow morning. Fujin nodded. Tomatis took his leave.